But where do you see the possibility of aliens landing on Earth within the next 20, 30 years?
The probability will really depend on how humans evolve their consciousness on a individual level and then on a collective level. And we are seeing a slow, somewhat slow evolution and ascension on the individual level, because there are too many distractions happening on the collective. If you are to look at nature in your planet, nature is very, very evolved if you are to look through those lenses. And the interesting thing on your planet is that many humans see themselves as more evolved than nature, although they are not, especially in this day and age, because nature is going with the flow of creation and with the cycles of life. And because we are on such an accelerated path of evolution ascension, if our body has to catch up with the ascension that our mind, our mental, our emotional, our spiritual is going through. And that's why when people come and work with me, first question I was like, what's the quality of the water? What food are you drinking? Are you drinking alcohol? And I have turned people away and I said, go and sort out your health and then come back.
And we're live. Rubia Lacerda, how are you doing? How are we doing today?
I'm doing really good. Really excited to be here, Clayton.
Beautiful. And I guess I should say tudo bem. Oi, tudo bem.
Oi, tudo bem? Yes, that's hello. How are you in Portuguese?
It's been a while since I've been able to speak Portuguese. I need to get some more Brazilian influence in my life, but for some reason there's not too many Brazilians in Pittsburgh. So I guess I got to stick to the podcast for now.
Yes, yes.
But so you're born in Brazil, for those who don't know, and there was a little bit of Portuguese for those who don't know. I promise I'll keep it in English for the most part of this interview. If a couple Portuguese words slip out, I apologize. It's in my nature at this point. I just enjoy talking it. So, hi, we kind of started off in a weird energy, and I can already feel it kind of flowing into this conversation as well. I'm not sure what's off right now, but I was having camera problems and something feels a little different. And Rubia, you were saying that we can't even blame it on Mercury retrograde. So I guess we're just going to kind of go with it and see what happens.
Yes, yes. And I feel like part of the work that I do, I know we're going to dive deep into that, but it's coming for me to share right now, is part of the work that I do is transformational breakthrough, very quantum. And it doesn't matter whether it's a healing session or someone comes to have a session with me. When we are having a conversation, when we get together, things will shift and change, and a lot of the times in a big way. And I've been having really like beautiful, crazy experiences of quantum shifting, like good timeline shifting, all of these things. So I'm feeling that that there's something already shifting in the field, and you're feeling that. Hence why that energy, that you like feels a little bit weird, a little bit different. So that's what I'm getting. And if it may resonate, may or may not resonate, but that's the experience that I'm having.
That's interesting. And so when you say that, are you saying in humanity at large, or are you saying with me personally? Like, is it just weird for me right now, or is it weird for everybody?
Both. So
Both.
humanity at large, but also for you and for me.
And here's, I guess, an interesting thing too, is like, is it a good perception type thing to just tell ourselves that, like, okay, I'm feeling weird right now, that means I'm on the verge of a breakthrough? Like, is that just like a good mental strategy, or is there actually something energetically that's going on behind the scenes that is actually contributing to me feeling like this, because things are getting shifted and blocks are getting removed for that next step into the level +1?
Yes, for both, because both sound really similar and both can be really intertwined as well.
Mm. What makes them intertwined? Just because we're this like conscious being observing this, or what's going on?
Because you said there could be something weird already happening in the background, right? And that could be already happening because of this conversation that's going to be shifting something. So energetically speaking, things already started to get weird, quote unquote, before, a few hours before, even a couple of days before.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, because of this conversation, whatever we're going to talk about, maybe it's even just the fact that your voice, your presence is interacting with me. That's what could just even be the process as is.
Yes, and you interacting with me, so it's like a two-way thing. And then the impact that this is going to have at humanity at large.
Well, I'm all about trying to help humanity at large, so that's amazing. And so is this something you just kind of bring out in people whenever you work with them or show up on their podcasts?
Yes, and it has been happening more recently, more in the last few months, but even more in the last few weeks, because I have embodied a new layer of um, certainty and trust and knowing of like, wow, this work really, really is powerful. And also a new layer of being the observer, observing all that is happening here, observing consciousness. Because at the end of the day, I truly do believe that, for lack of another term, that this is, could say, a simulation, and we are playing a beautiful game here. So just looking at the awakening to what really is happening here, rather than being caught up in in the game, being the observer of
Mm.
the game. So that's, I've been really like, I've been hearing this for years, but there was a part of me that would be like, really, yeah, these people talk about this stuff, maybe they had too much, mushrooms, and they just stepped to the other side, they're not coming back. And but then I started to really go, wow, that to really step into the observer self, and really be more aware of what really is happening here.
And it sounds like that kind of came from a piece of you that, how did you articulate it? That there was like this like level or a layer that you were kind of embodying more. Like, what does that kind of entail? Like, was there just like physical things that were occurring that you kind of just started resonating more with? What does that mean to, because it sounds like you're like consciously aware that a piece of you has taken a step up or a step higher, a step more evolved. So like, how do you know that, and like what does that feel like?
I know that from the contrasting experiences that we have as humans, right? So for last a few years, when I decided to make this, I call mission, into a business, mission business, the ups and downs were huge, because my mission is an extension of me. So I have to continuously work on myself, so that my internal frequency shifts, and then my external frequency and my external reality will shift, and I'll have a quote unquote successful business. Attract more clients, make more money, support more people, get my message out there more. And in this process, I became slightly obsessed with becoming a better version of myself, and really making the business side of things work, because I had no business experience before this. I was very much like an employee mindset. So it was tough. It was tough. I have to say, many times that I wanted to give up, but I remember thinking, I really do not want to work for someone else, be told what to do. And for me, can you imagine a channel of ETs working in a call center
I
9 to 5 with really like normal people? It
don't
was
think they would let
so,
you.
it was excruciating. It was painful. So I was like, well, I'm really going to have to look at the parts of myself that I avoided my whole life, because if I want to make this work, my mission is an extension of me. So in this process, in the last few months, I was in Brazil for holidays. I hadn't been for 3.5 years, and I was there in September. And while I was there, it was like I was disconnected a little bit from my mission. And I came back, and I had a mentor at the time, a business mentor, and a she was very good with social media, all of that. And on the way back, I remember in one of my transiting flights, I was voice messaging her saying, I'm tired and I want to give this up. And I think I'm going to go back to a job, just so that I don't need to think about any of this anymore. I don't need to think about mission, business, self development. I just had enough. And we had a beautiful, powerful, transformational conversation. I'm not sure exactly what she said, but she said something that just made me go, whoa, like, you know what? I'm going to give this a good last go. And I came back in just end of October, and I just went all in. And in that process of going all in, I attracted these people into my life that had gone all in and they were doing amazing. And then I went and worked with their coaches and mentors. And this was a transformational sales training where this guy was looking into my eyes and saying, Rubia, this is not about you. This is about your mission. You've been making this about you this whole time. And there were so many things that he was telling me that were showing me like that all of these things that I've been studied in the last few years about consciousness, about being the observer, about they because I removed my ego out of the way, that me making it about myself. When I had that realization, I just remember I was sweating. It was aircon room. It was really cold. I was sweating. I was shaking, and I was laughing. It was like all these programs were being purged out of my
Wow.
system, and then it went. And then from that moment, so this was early November, I started to truly embody all of the things. They were there already. I had to remove the programming that was not allowing me to embody them. And since then, I've been like, wow. And the things that have happened in my life since then have been crazy, crazy in an amazing way.
That's so cool. And I think a big piece of that is probably that shift you were talking about from making it about you to making it about your mission. And I think it's really fascinating you're talking about this because I'm feeling that this is likely something that might be contributing to what maybe not the frequency interrupts that we're talking about here, but it's definitely a piece of my life that I'm in a lot more right now where it feels like I'm in this state of continuously like, how do I dissolve my ego more? How do I make this less about my personal, let's say, achievements or the numbers or, because numbers, it's not a big deal, right? End of the day, it's not going to be, whenever I'm 80 or 90, if I made $1 million versus 2 million, it's not like, to me, it's like not going to matter. And so how do I keep asking myself, like, how do I go about dissolving that ego, more aligning with that mission of helping others? Because I think, from the idea of the ripple effect, the butterfly effect, if you help one person, you help 10. So it's like, okay, how do I make this transition from 100 people to 200 people, right? So where I'm kind of going with this is like, how did you feel that shift, if you will, from, and I don't know if it would be ego dissolution or dissolving in your case, but how did you make that mental pivot? Was there something you had to do? Was it just a conscious awareness shift? Like, how do you dissolve yourself away from, okay, it's all about me. Like, I want to be the one on Forbes. I want to be the one with 2 million followers. Yet, no, I just want to be doing my divine mission and feeling fulfillment along the way.
Mm. I never really had like for me, the moment that I said I want my message to reach the world when, I started in 2018 with a Facebook page, at the start of the journey, you think you just create Facebook and Instagram. At the time I didn't even have Instagram.
Hmm.
And then you put yourself out there. So for me, it was always about my message. It was never like I want a huge following, or I just wanted my message to get across the planet as many people as possible. But in that process, I was very obsessed with the business side of things and with the making money side of things. So for me, that was the journey of dissolving that being the priority. And what happened was stopping making it about me was me really understanding that in that obsession of making it about money, things were never working out properly.
Mm.
And I had to start really observe myself. So I really do a process where I sit in my living room and my balcony is outside, the veranda is outside, and I'm in the living room. I sit in my higher self seat and I look at Rubia ego at Rubia outside and I observe her. I observe her. What is she going through? What is she needing? What is she wanting? And then if I see any little, cracks around business and around money that is not serving her, I'm like, what is it that ego Ruben needs right now to have that fulfilled so that together, all parts of me can take on this mission in the highest alignment possible.
And is that an element? And what do you mean by, I guess, these cracks, right? I guess, like from my mindset, right, is like the ego. right? And I'm thinking about this from a male perspective here, so bear with me a little bit. But it's in terms of wanting to be with all the hot women, or having, so much money, and and being the provider, and all the all these things, right? So I assume that there's a crack in the ego there. Is that kind of what you're saying by a crack in the ego? Is that's a leaking aspect of my ego that's trying to come through?
That's correct. So yes, so that Rubia, like when I was observing that part of me, the ego, I call it the ego mind personality. Those three. When I was observing her, all she wanted was to be. She want a lifelong partner, that so that she can feel, have this false sense of security in a relationship, and all she wanted was that her business is already stabilized, and that she doesn't ever need to worry about creating money ever again, and that everyone loves her and everyone loves her work. There's no one emailing her complaining about her prices, which is all the stuff that happens, right? So that she doesn't need to deal with let's conflict. But of
Mm.
course, that's that's the part of us that we all have. A lot of people, I feel like, wouldn't be able. Oh, a few years ago, I wouldn't be able to sit here and say that there's a part of me that is like that. But we all have that, right? But it's a matter of observing. So for me, I talk to that part of me. I literally will talk to those parts. And I spoke to that part and said, you already enough. You already loved. You already have all of these things. Look at this, and this. And this is an illusion. You don't need this. This is, I show that part of me so that then we can integrate. Because what happens is some people say, make all this shadow work as well. Because if that part is not being expressing itself, then it can play up. So for me, it was a matter of allowing these parts of me express themselves, so that we then can come together and do this work. And there's no part of me trying to play up, trying to seduce, and trying to use, like we would say, the unintegrated part of the shadow. Because you can have the shadow, but it can be, in my opinion, integrated.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you're seeing what the ego's desires are, right? Whether it's that long-term partner, whether it's money, and you're kind of asking that ego, why does it want that thing? And then you're almost playing this, I don't want to say mind game, but you're almost playing this like back and forth of, okay, well, you want a long-term partner for the safety, but you're already safe. You're kind of having that internal dialogue.
Yes, that's correct. So that that part knows that it's already safe. So that when I go and I continue seeing the guy that I'm seeing, I'm not trying to manipulate him into getting into a relationship before he's ready for it.
Because then it would be, if he were to come into that, it's really just going to be your safety net at the end of the day. It's not really going to be about it being a prosperous, unified, you know, con- conjoining. That seems like the wrong word, but coupling of two people.
That's correct. Yes, because uh, doing this work, right? I personally believe that um, doing the right integrity is doing the right thing when no one's watching. And everything that I do as a person, because my mission is such a close extension of me, everything that I do, everything that I be and do, it is going to be having an impact on how I'm showing up in the world and how I'm supporting humanity. So I am constantly observing myself and attempting to be in the highest of integrity. And when I say attempting, because we are doing the best we can, right? Recently, a friend of mine pointed out something that he saw, that he was like, okay, I can see here this is a deeper part of. I was like, oh, I didn't see that I was playing that. He's like, Ruby, this is the deepest part of your shadow that it's such an unconscious level that you weren't able to see. And we created this conversation so that I could point it out to you. So yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What was that? Like, what is it like that? There's even deeper parts of our ego that we're not aware of. Is that what you're hinting at?
So the unconscious mind. So have you seen that picture of the iceberg where the tip of the iceberg is the conscious mind, and then the this huge part of the iceberg that's underneath the ocean, or that's in the inside the ocean, is the unconscious mind?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something. One of the main things that I specialize on is the accessing people's unconscious patterns that are currently creating their reality, which is something that I had for such a long time. And were the things that I shifted to then be here, even having this conversation with you. And I became so passionate about it. Some of the beings that I channeled, the Arcturians, actually guided me to become a practitioner of accessing people's unconscious mind so that they can truly be in full alignment with their soul's calling, doing what their soul really chose to come here to do, rather than running a life based on unconscious patterns.
Well, let's certainly dive into then that journey of yours, right? Because I've gathered that it's a rather interesting one, right? You started off in Brazil, then you traveled a bit, ended up in Australia. So whenever you were in Brazil, when you were growing up, um, kind of my question is like what the question I always ask people is like, what was the first thing you wanted to be when you grew up? But from my research, I think you kind of always knew what you wanted to do. Is that a fair assessment?
So to answer your first question, I was obsessed with animals. It's like my first memory is cats. So I kind of thought I was going to be a vet. But then seeing my dad being a doctor, my mom was a nurse assistant, knew I wanted to help people.
Mm.
But I had no idea what I was going to do at university. And in Brazil, you finish, high school, you must go to university so that you can be somebody. Pathetic. I still
In
laugh
air
at it. I'm like,
quotes.
what? At 18 years of age, you must know. It's like, what?
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I'm still
But
trying to figure
then,
that out myself.
exactly.
Yeah.
um, and
But
then, yes, go
growing up,
ahead.
I think I remember you saying that you had or you were surrounded by paranormal events, and it was kind of like situations that your parents almost like couldn't understand or explain, but they were kind of like in this quasi state of like not wanting to believe it was real.
100%, yes. So it was very young, from a very young age. But when it came to transitioning from child to teenager around 12, I started having really paranormal experiences where I was in bed and I could hear people walking around the house and everyone was in bed. And then I would go to sleep and I would wake up. There was a woman sitting by the side of my bed and I would start talking to her. And then I would wake up. So I was lucid dreaming. I was really tapping into, parallel reality, whatever was going on there. So I'll wake up, I'll yell out, Mom, come here, Mom, there's someone sitting on my bed. And she'd kind of make a joke about it and, and then move on. But then it was affecting how I was performing at school because I was awake most of the night, having crazy dreams and hearing footsteps. And when my grandmother passed away, when someone would pass away in the family, lights would flicker and I could see them, I could feel them. I was like, Grandma is here, she's saying she's okay.
Whoa.
And then they would just smile, and you could tell, like you said, exactly what you said. Part of them did believe me, but there was another part that was like, yeah, we don't know. We don't understand enough what's going on here to believe her. But everything was so like connected. They would see, they're like, Ruby, the lights only flicker when you're here. When you're not here, they don't flicker.
That's crazy. And so what do you think that resistance was in them to open themselves up to this idea or to fully believe what you were telling them?
I truly believe it's just the programming, the programming that they grew up with. It was quite foreign to them. It's not something they maybe would see that on TV sometimes, but it's not something that they were familiar with. And my dad being a doctor and my mom being a Catholic, so both of them could really think. My mom could think it was a thing of the devil and my dad could think I was crazy, and I'm so
Right.
grateful that neither of them thought that. They just didn't put too much thought into it. And back then we didn't have the internet or social media where you can have access to in for educate yourself about all of these things
For
either.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, and that's an interesting thing that you bring up, which is about Catholic or even Christianity, let's just even say as a whole. It seems that, especially through the things I post on my Instagram, a whole lot of people believe that extraterrestrials or aliens are automatically the devil or they're automatically demons. And have you figured out where that comes from or why that is?
I'm pretty sure because I've had religious friends that there is somewhere in the Bible that may say something that if it's not of, of my father, it is not of God. There's something along the lines of that. And, a lot of people truly believe word by word of what's on the Bible. So if it's not on the Bible and it doesn't say that it's of God, it is not of God. But funny enough, there is a saying on the Bible that says, there are many, I don't know how to say in English, there are many homes in my father's home, or that where a lot of people think that's on planet Earth, but many people say that it they are actually on the Bible that are talking about all the homes outside of planet Earth.
Like there's many planets almost, or there's many civilizations
Yes. And
that it's been
so,
created.
and they say, if they say this is not of God, then it's going to be of the devil, hence why they will believe. So in Brazil, there's this religion called Spiritism. And
Okay.
that's where my parents got a friend to come that they was a spiritist to come over and have a chat to me. And that's when I discovered that I had mediumship abilities because he told me, right? But my mom said, don't tell anyone that you are following spiritism, that you're going to their meetings, because a lot of Catholics and Christians, they think spiritism is a thing of the devil. Because they believe in spirits, they believe in life after death. So even within religions, there is also, judging each other in Brazil.
Oh, for sure. I think that's a human general thing that kind of
Mhm.
occurs. And I actually looked up what you were talking about. It looks like it's John 14:2, if that sounds
Oh
familiar.
yes,
My
yes.
father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? If that were not so, would I have told you that I was going to play a place for you? Um, it's kind of an interesting way to phrase it. Let me see if I can find the new King James version. In my father's house are many mansions. If it were
Mm-hmm.
not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In my father's house. So I'm thinking it's like the universe has many mansions, being like many planets or many.
Yes.
If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. Holy shit. Do people, what's like the traditional commentary? Okay, let's see here. In my father's house are many mansions. The Greek word used for house here is slightly different from that used of the material temple on earth in John 2:16. The exact meaning will at once be seen as a comparison from Corinthians 5:1 or 2 Corinthians 5:1. The only other passage in the New Testament, metaphorically, Jesus comes into heaven as the habitation of God and that have been taught prayer, Father that art in heaven. I don't know. I can't really find. I don't know. They don't really have a interpretation of it. Do you know what's the like classical interpretation of this line? Are you aware of that?
Which one? The one that there are many mentions?
Yeah, the
Oh,
many
the classical
mansions.
okay, the
Because I
classical
assume that they
interpretation.
wouldn't say that it's. I would assume they wouldn't believe that that's aliens if they also think that aliens are.
Uh,
You know what I mean?
as
Like,
far as I remember, the classical interpretation is that there are, all the countries on planet Earth.
okay.
I am pretty sure. Don't quote me on that because I've never studied the Bible, but I have heard the story. I've heard a couple of people tell this story before.
Um, Let me see if I can find something. John 14:2 meaning. But here's what's also interesting, and I've noticed this through the Bible, and I've kind of even started looking at the Bhagavad Gita. When you look at like these sacred texts, you hear something that's pretty mystical, and it seems like they can usually be interpreted in many different ways.
Yes, yes. I'm not sure if you ever heard this, but it's because I never went and looked for. I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Somebody told me this, but I'm not going to go and research like you're doing right now. But I'm pretty sure someone also told me about Jesus talking about something that he was eating, but it's basically something about someone interpreted that as Jesus having mushrooms and
Whoa.
having visions and being able to accessing the quantum field, and that's how he did the healings that he did. It's not miracles, and it's not just Jesus that had those, quote unquote powers. everyone has access to do what he did because he was fully tapped into the quantum field.
Right. And I've heard that in multiple ways, and yeah, here, so I think I have an interesting translation here, I think, or translation description of it. Um, there's this one people saying that this was kind of said. Jesus, I guess, had said this or described this to them whenever he was like preparing to leave, if you will. So the first part, my father's house has many mansions. Jesus refers to God as his father and ours as well. He resides in heaven, which is an actual place, though where is this heavenly dimension is remains a mystery. But in some real way, God has a house with a place for his people. This should be a great comfort. That doesn't really make sense. And then the last part is basically saying that Jesus never lies and that he had told them about this place before, to which Jesus said is the way in 14:6. That's interesting. And then there's a paragraph here which says that scholars aren't 100% sure on how to interpret it. That's fascinating.
Mm,
I find that really interesting whenever
mm.
scholars aren't, let's say, 100% sure on how to decipher something, right? So
Yes.
I like your
Yes.
interpretation of it a bit more.
And I just remembered something. I have had visions of Jesus as a Pleiadian being.
Pleiadian.
Yes. As
Okay.
a so I experienced Jesus and Mary. So once I was mourning the breakup of a relationship, and I said, what do I need in this moment? And I said, this moment right now, I just wish I had a father and a mother energy. And I just see Jesus and Mary inside of my room, and there was a Pleiadian energy. It was like a
Interesting.
mixture of both, and then each one of them were holding me to each, they were each one by my side, and I felt embraced by both of them. And I healed in that moment, and I fell asleep and I woke up so much better. And I've heard other people talking about relating Jesus to Pleiadian being as well.
Do you think it's possible that, I guess, I'm trying to think about this, right? Do you think it's possible that maybe it's I guess let me try to articulate what I'm thinking at least a little bit more, like, Jesus being a very enlightened individual, right? I think anyone can agree on that, right? The very basis, right? Do you think at some level maybe I should just back up and ask it this, like what's your interpretation of him being quote unquote like a Pleiadian being? Does that mean he came from there? Does that mean that he's there now, serving life or energy is there, or kind of like, what, I guess, does that mean that you see him as a Pleiadian being?
I feel like all of the above. And I see him also as an ascended master, right? Many will say an ascended master. And I feel like there is a timeline, there is a version of Jesus that experiences himself as a Pleiadian being. And me having this connection with, extraterrestrials, light beings, I call it extraterrestrial so people understand, because I call them light beings. Then that's the experience that I had based on the connections that I have. Because I believe, and I hope that this doesn't get confusing, but I believe there are multiple timelines, and there are multiple ways that they will be able to, all these beings, and Jesus will be able to express himself. And for me, in that moment, it was expressed as a Pleiadian being.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of answers like where I was trying to go with that. So it's like that in whatever timeline of Jesus you were experiencing, it was of a Palladian energy.
That's correct. Yes, because what happens as well, when beings show themselves to us, they also show themselves to us based on our consciousness. So recently I was going through, I don't remember what it was. I was going through a healing, it was a breathwork event. I was somewhere doing something woo woo, and there was a moment that I said I could feel things happening on my head, and I said, what are you guys doing? I want to see it. And they said, we can't make it pretty for you today, so if we show you, it may scare you off, because a lot of the times you see
Oh,
beautiful lights, and but today, because we are going to the deep parts of your brain, really changing your really changing some programming patterns that have been there for like lifetimes, it's not going to look pretty. I said, that's okay. I'm ready. I trust you and I'm ready to see. And it didn't. It was just these big lights and all these dark things being pulled out of my brain. And there were all sorts of things happening because I was ready to see that. But yes, they will make it sure that our consciousness receive it. And that is why a lot of people, when they go to plant medicine journey, especially ayahuasca, they freak out because ayahuasca doesn't do that. Ayahuasca's like, I'm not going to make this pretty for you. Here you go, slap. And it's like a big, it's full on.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, especially in the terms of being ready to see a certain thing. Because I mean, the phrase,
Yes.
like, when the student's ready, the master will show themselves. I've even seen that echoed throughout, every ideology that I can find, and it seems to be very it's like so bizarre to me, because it seems like once you come across this new master, right? Or this new master seems like the wrong word. This new element of being, or this new lesson, or this new tool, if you will, that you're like, holy shit, this has been here the entire time. And I just didn't even know that I had access to this. And it's like, yeah, you always had access to this, but you almost like weren't ready yet to embody this, or to see this, or to use this in your current reality.
Yes, 100%. And what I see happening a lot in, like, with, spiritual people, um, discernment, because a lot of people, like, I have to protect myself. Well, I'm scared of what I see. And a lot of people, especially like with plant medicine, they'll say, I had a bad trip. And I always say, there's no such thing as a bad trip. It's whatever way that your consciousness is able to deal with that based on your patterns and your programming. You see
spoken
that as a bad trip.
spoken
Yeah,
like
I
someone
see.
who who's done plant medicine before.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And that's a funny story, actually. I'll tell you. And I chose to see as I was purging. I was purging all the programming, not only for myself but for my ancestors. I don't see it as a bad trip. And in that moment, even in the trip, the I am, the observer self was there, and it was like, Rubia, we got this. Just allow yourself. So in that moment, that when we are having a certain experience, when I'm seeing certain things, and because so many people come to me and say, I am scared. What if these beings pretend that they are of the light, but they are not? What if you're actually not channeling the light and you're channeling false information? Blah, blah, blah. There's so much. And that's why it
Sure.
requires so much certainty myself, and trust, and just knowing and making sure that I am transmitting that certainty and trust to others. So it's exactly like you said. There's a lot of things that I have received that I wouldn't be able to have received if I didn't have this certainty and trust, because it could tip me to the other side of where I'm like, I'm being infiltrated. There's darkness here. This is not of the light. And this happens to a lot of people, actually.
Yeah,
And
and that's what's crazy too, is, and I know I've gone through that exact thing myself, right? Where
mm,
it's this, and I see it a lot in I'm going to say Western society, but at least in United States, area, like when you have this more like control mindset of, I need to be in control, then you're preventing yourself almost from surrendering to any sort of messages that are coming through. Like, it kind of comes back to what you're saying. Like, if I don't trust this, if I don't fully embody that there's potential for good here, right? And even more so, right? Like, let's hypothetically, I don't know that it's, I mean, this is a weird conversation to get into, but let's say hypothetically it's even a bad message, right? It's like there's going to be something in there for you to learn, right? Like we have this like knee jerk reaction to judge something as good or bad. And I've seen this all the time. I mean, I've seen it so much more now whenever I've been able to take this like step back to just kind of observe things from a more neutral perspective. It's like,
mm,
if you launch a program, right? We can say it's bad that if you sell none of that program, but it's only bad because you determined it to be bad. So it's like, can you trust that launching that program, and even if you get zero people, you're going to learn something. You know that this is going to be a piece of the puzzle for something even bigger down the road. And I think
mm.
that's where the true power can lie in an individual, to realize, like, it's like, no matter the outcome of the information I'm given, I trust that this information is going to take me a step closer down my path or on my journey.
100%. I love that example because I've gone through exactly that.
It's a pretty wild one. it's a pretty wild like thing to fully trust in, right? And it was, and where I was kind of dancing on talking about this was like in the idea of like dark and light beings. And I'm interested to get your opinion on this, but someone brought up how they said something along the lines of like, have you noticed that the people who spend the most time kind of shielding themselves from dark energy tend to get psychically attacked the most? And I was like, that's a pretty interesting observation. And I don't know if it was on the podcast or not. And they were like, yeah, like, there's, if you choose to create that almost in your mind, then it will exist. And it reminds me of the news so much. It was like whenever they were talking about this in my mind, I was like seeing the news and like, how if you're constantly being shown all of these, terrorist attacks or people getting murdered or killings or the recession or this or that, then you're going to create that in your reality because that's what you're kind of feeding into the system. And I was like, holy shit, man. Like, I think you're onto something here.
Mm, I agree. I think it's really is about discernment. And if you're constantly protecting yourself, you're actually giving life to the fact that there's something bad for you to protect yourself from.
Right. Right. I mean, why protect yourself if everything's for your highest good? There's no need to protect
Yes.
yourself.
And if you trust, and if you fully trust that, like for me, I fully 100% trust that I am trance channeling the Arcturians, and they are beings of light supporting me and humanity at the highest, right? But if I have any doubts, then that's where that's where shit hits the fan, literally. Because I have gone through purging processes. So when one of these mentoring that I had, that business mentoring that I went through, it was quite transformational, right? And in one of them was full on, the in the room when you're going through a training, and there's usually, because they are NLP masters, and they picking somebody in the room, and they're constantly picking on that one person. I was the person being picked on the room, and he was really digging. He was digging, 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 and then I remember waking up the next day after 3 days of full on training, and I was numb. And I was like, who am I? What is this mission? Why did I choose this? And it was so bad, Clayton, that my I just heard this voice, go back to sleep, because like my mind was just messy. And in that moment, I remember the thought coming in, maybe I've been infiltrated, maybe something bad, maybe someone put bad spell on me, whatever. And I saw the programming, and I have so much compassion for people that go through that stuff, because in that moment I could have fell for that. But I remember I was going like, nah, I've got this. I know exactly that
Mm.
I know that I'm purging. So I went back to sleep, and I woke up so much better, and I was purging for a couple of days. On day 3, I was boom. And I just came back like everything in my reality. I featured in this other podcast, and things just blew out of proportion. A lot of people are seeing my message across the world now. So can you imagine if that moment I got to choose, if I decided to fall for like a programming that's not even mine, that some people carry? I was like, it could have gone. I could be purging still and going, I have been infiltrated and something bad happened to me.
Right.
So it's a choice
Right.
as well. We get to choose. We really do get to choose.
Yeah. It's crazy how much we get to choose, right? Like, even on what we're saying here, it sounds like we're both in agreement then that we literally get to choose if we're even being infiltrated by negative entities, right? Or we get to choose that aliens are demons, like, or devils, like, and because we'll actively seek out every piece of evidence to support that. And I've
Mm-hmm.
even seen this on myself where the thing that was like the most extreme for me, and I saw it whenever I had someone on the podcast who believed in that the earth is flat. And in hearing them kind of explain it, like I would even bring up points, and it was really fascinating to watch how their mind would like just take that information and warp it to also support the fact that the earth is flat. And in that conversation, it really like dug with me that like we can create whatever reality we want to create. Now, I think there's probably a level of meta truths, if you will. Like, if he tries to go and design a rocket based on flat earth theory, it's probably going to fail. Or holy shit, maybe it'll work because he's still using the underpinning numbers of math or whatever it is that he uses to actually create flight. And he's like, okay, I created a rocket and shot it up into space, and yet this still proves like what I've been saying. Like this actually proves that the Earth's flat. Like, you know, I'm going down a pretty hard hypothetical rabbit hole. But all of this to say that we really are so much more powerful than I think we give ourselves credit for. I mean, maybe even in the spirituality community.
100%. And something that you said reminded me of something that I say all the time because I teach about this, in some of my courses. I talk about everything is a co creation. Anything that is in your field and in your consciousness, you are co creating with it. So if someone say, oh, I've been psychically attacked, there's these bad energies, you are co creating with it. And a lot of the times, the unconscious mind is very tricky and sneaky. The unconscious mind wants to protect us from, wants to keep us safe. So, for example, I get a lot of people that want to do the work that they want to put themselves out there like I have, but they're not able to. And when I dig to the unconscious belief and they say, oh, I'm afraid of being attacked, if I do that, I'm going to be psychically attacked. Too many people will be looking at me. There's going to be jealousy and envy, and that's not good for my energy. When in reality, the unconscious pattern is if I put myself out there, I'm going to die because that's what happened when they were a witch many lifetimes ago.
Mm.
So consciously, we think we are being psychically attacked, but when you get to the unconscious root, it's actually something else. So we co-create with the belief of being psychically attacked, of there being a dark energy, of being infiltrated. We are co-creating with that. So this is such an important reminder to know that everything that is happening in our reality, whether we perceive it as good or bad, is a co-creation.
And it probably gives it a lot more power too. If you believe that it's a psychic entity or deity or demon from a different reality, that's a lot stronger than anything from this reality that could be harmful to you. And so I can only imagine that the gravity, the power of that belief, if you're holding it, could be just even more detrimental in the long run.
Yes, yes. And I'll give an example. This is such a great example. I had someone come to me once for, it was part of a program. So he had to have a session with me, but he came kind of like not wanting 100% what was going on. And he said, Ruby, I actually had 100 demons with me. Someone has been clearing them out of my field. I'm like, I know exactly what's going on here. So let's go to the unconscious root. So as I started digging, because that's the process that I do, I dig the unconscious mind. We got to I was like, so we discovered that he was co-creating with what he called the demons because his business failed, he lost his home, his marriage breakdown, and it was all because of business failures. And so in that process of being failed and being in this process where having these demons was actually protecting him of putting himself out there again, making all this money and losing everything. So he
Okay.
was actually co-creating with this energy that he called demons because that was keeping him at home, locked at home, and he could tell everyone, I can't go anywhere, I can't do anything, I can't start another business because there's demons with me and they're stopping me from doing so. When in reality, he created that so that wouldn't fail again.
Because that would be scarier than gives you like the scapegoat of like, oh, it's
Yes.
not me, guys, it's the demons. I didn't fail.
Yes.
It was the demons' energy that's keeping me down. So
Yeah.
how did you as a coach, or I think it sounded like you were a coach in this situation.
Yes. Yes.
How did you kind of get him through that?
So the way that I never tell people what the unconscious pattern is. I ask, we call this technique theta healing, but I do it my own way now. So it's the theta brainwave gets activated. With the theta brainwave, it's usually when you're falling asleep, when you're waking up, and some parts of your meditative state, and it's when you're very susceptible to suggestions. So it's a quantum healing modality. So while he was, we go into that state, and I connect to the creator of all that is, and I literally listen to what creator has to tell me. Like, okay, ask this question now. I'm like receiving, so I'm being a channel in some way, and I'm asking him questions. So, what's the worst thing? This is a classic question that I ask when I'm doing this process. So what's the worst thing that could happen if all these demons go away? Tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Because the first thing that comes to mind when you are in that theta state, it's the answer of your unconscious mind. And then he
Right.
said, well, if they go away, then I have to start again. And I don't know how to do it. And then the person's like, wow. And then people are like so surprised about the answers that come up. And then I do muscle testing. So I ask the person to say a sentence out loud. It is safe to do business again. And when they say it, I can see the yes or no connected to their unconscious mind. I do a process where I'm able to see it, to feel it. And then I do downloads where I'm removing that belief and I'm downloading new ones while they're in this state. And it's so powerful, so transformational. That's what I did so that I could be here. So I was like, I must become a practitioner of this. And so I get them to realize, because it's so much more powerful when the person has the realization themselves rather than you telling them.
Right.
That's why questions are, like one of my mentors says, questions are the answers. Questions are so powerful because the person can bring up their own questions, their own answers. And you feel so much more empowering when you say it out loud rather than when you receive from someone.
Right, because it comes from like a piece of you. Like you're
Mm.
saying it. You could see it yourself. You're like, "Oh, I know it's wrong." But if you tell them, they're going to kind of block up or protect themselves from seeing that truth.
Yes.
And so you've been talking about the Arcturians quite a bit now. So what are they? What are the Arcturians? How did you find out about the Arcturians? How do you know that they're real? I mean, let's start at the beginning. When did you first meet an Arcturian being?
I love, how do you know that they're real? Um, well, I was obsessed with extraterrestrial beings, with anything spiritual from a young age. And I was born in 82. So young age, from the age of when I was born right up until I was 12, 13, there was no internet, social media. So it's so good because I knew it wasn't like I was influenced by something external.
Mm.
I would buy magazines about ETs and everything. And I remember telling my parents, I'm not from here. You guys know I'm not from here, right? And they would just laugh. They thought it was funny. And then my nephew was born. I was like, he's not from here either. And so, long story short, I did all the normal things. Went to uni, came to Australia, I did all the jobs, cleaning, hospitality, banking. And I thought, once I get a government job, then I'll be happy. And I was so far from happy. And then in 2015, I decided I'm going to start studying part time so that I can do this work, helping people. And I tried to do the normal thing. I tried to be a naturopath, a holistic counselor, a healer. And I remember I did become a healer. I went to Brazil for 3 months to practice and to visit my family. This was in 2018. And I remember, Clayton, like someone was lying on a massage table, and I'm doing pranic healing on them. So it's very similar to Reiki. And I remember thinking, gosh, this is so boring. People were getting amazing results because, it's the healing for, especially for anxiety and depression. And I was like, this is boring. I can't do this for the rest of my life. I love talking, and I'm sure there's something else. And in that moment, my like third eye vision opens up, and I see these five blue beings, extraterrestrial beings.
In the
And
middle of
they're all,
working on this person?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. This person was a Catholic person, religious too. They would, some of them
I
would
assume
come
you
in
didn't
and
say
they said,
anything.
oh no. Some of them would come in and they would say, you're not doing anything related to spiritism, are you? This is not spiritual stuff, your work, is it? So like, yeah, I had very religious clients.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And they had amazing results, which is great.
Of course.
So I see these beings and I'm seeing them through my third eye vision. So everything that I see is through the third eye. I've never seen them like physically, like I'm seeing you, but it feels just as real. And they say to me, they just smile and they're like, Rubia, we have something to teach you that you're gonna love so much more. And that you're gonna do it and you're gonna love it more and help people more. And I remember going, please go away. I cannot tell people from a small religious town that I'm seeing extraterrestrial beings. Like, go away.
Are you in Brazil at this time?
Yeah, I was in Brazil.
Okay.
I was in my hometown,
What's
yes.
what
And
is
I
your
had
hometown?
clients. It's called Juruáia. So it's in the state
Juruada.
of Minas Gerais. I don't know if you remember that state.
I've been to Minas Gerais, yeah.
Yeah, so it's inland. It's a small town inland, like it's
Okay.
5 hours away from the nearest beach.
Okay, maybe. I've been to Santa Rita do Sapucaí.
Yeah, it's around that area.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
because I thought it sounded familiar, but
Yes.
not to take us on a little Brazil tour, but
It's a tiny town. There's 10,000 people there. And I had clients straight away because I did a free event where someone put their hand up and said, I walked in with my back locked and I came out walking properly. So, and then everyone's like, I want a session too. And because it's small town, everyone knows our family and, my dad, everyone knows my dad, that kind of
right.
thing. Then I had instant credibility and people had been watching me on social media. So it was so great. It was so meant to be because that's where I got a lot of practice and experience as soon as I finished all my courses. But I
Okay.
couldn't tell them I wasn't comfortable talking. So I came back to Australia and I tried to do the same thing. It didn't work. I had no business experience. I was terrible with money. So I went back to working full time. And in this year working full time, like I could feel this connection with ETs, but I was still like, man, I can't tell this to anyone. Can't tell anybody. And
Now, was that built up because of your upbringing? Like because
yes,
your family was kind of closed off from it, your city, if you will, was like, okay, we can't talk about this. We don't want this getting out. It was like, okay, then I guess I guess it sounds like you kind of projected that onto everybody then, even like everybody in Australia.
yes, because I was like, if I talk about this, it's going to affect my family in Brazil. They are going to have, because I'm not there. But if I start saying that I channel ETs, that I talk to them, can you imagine the backlash in my hometown? I was more worried about my family than about me. Yes, I was a bit worried about me, but I was worried about them.
Right.
So when I came to Australia, I went back to working full time. Then come 2020, and I was so over that job. I was like, God, please help me. Every day I was praying and saying, I need to get out of this. This is terrible. I don't even want to be on this planet. If this is not it. I did not come here to work 40 hours, have a month off. This is insanity. If the money was great, maybe okay. Like, and I just want to make it clear that working, if people that work and you love it, go for it. I just didn't. And in that I went to an ayahuasca. I had a theta healing session, which is the work that I do. Then I had all these unconscious patterns exposed. I was like, wow, my business is not working because of this. I can't. I'm not allowing myself to make money because how dare I make money doing what I love when there's people starving on the planet? That was one of my unconscious patterns.
Mm,
There were so many unconscious patterns, and in that I went and did an ayahuasca journey. That was start of May 2020, and ayahuasca's like, Rubia, it's time. You must tell your truth. You cannot hold this back anymore, because I've had experiences where I saw them. I saw a spaceship. I saw these beings holding me, looking deep into my eyes during other ayahuasca experiences where I had very close encounters with them. And so she's like, it's time. So I remember I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And the day after, I met this guy that said, I know a galactic business mentor and she can help you with your gifts. And I told him, I said, what do you think? She's like, Ruby, you must tell your story. You have to tell your story. So all of this happened in a period of a month, right? So one day I'm like, okay, whoever you are, I'll let you come through. I did a little ceremony at home and I let these beings channel through me. I already knew I could channel because I had mediumship abilities, and it was insane. The energy that I felt, the message, and I felt them. It was the blue beings that I had seen almost 2 years ago that I was blocking them. So
mm,
it was them, it was their consciousness. And wow, it was, I didn't know that it was the Arcturians though. This is, this was the biggest test of trust for me, because I knew that they were extraterrestrials and I knew that they were of the light and they were good beings, but I didn't know exactly who they were. So I started to ask, and they said, when you're ready, we will tell you. And a few months later, I discovered. So I started researching.
gotcha. That's wild. So, were you when you channeling? So it was, I guess, in the, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in the ayahuasca ceremony, you were basically like the message that came through was that you needed to start expressing your truth, expressing your gifts, if you will, to the world. And then whenever you got into the channeling, that was then whenever the Arcturians, or at least the blue beings, if you will, came through and showed you what it was that you were here to do. Is that kind of how it played out?
Yes, they said, Rubia, you're here to share our message, your channel to share our message and to support people remove unconscious patterns so that the truth of their soul can be expressed.
Mm,
Because when the whole of humanity is doing that, instantly you shift because it's in alignment with universal truth. Because right now there are way too, people are just living, a lot of people are just, it's a program, they're walking programs that is not the truth of who they really are.
right. Right. They're just living out these baseline patterns that
Mm.
we've heard about classically all the time of, oh, we're rubbing on subconscious programmings. Oh, it's the matrix. Oh, you got to break out of it. And then so it's kind of like in your alignment or your place to help people break through that
That's correct,
reprogramming.
yes.
And then something that's coming through is I think I saw this on another or on a podcast you did where you were saying that you were even still channeling as a young kid. So it's not like this was your first channeling session. You even mentioned you channeled as a kid, but
Mhm.
you never did it sober. Is that a fair way to say it? Because it's funny because like whenever I was learning to channel, I was always told like you need to wait 24 hours after drinking or smoking anything. Like you need to be sober for at least 24 hours. But it sounded like with
Yes.
your stories that you were never channeling sober.
And that's what I teach. So so
Were you
when I was
how to
around
channel drunk?
16,
Is that what you teach?
no, no, don't drink. Even on my session, on my email confirmation, if you book a session with me, it said cannot have anything in your system for at least 24 hours, more if better.
Mm,
Um, and when I was 16, I started drinking with the age of 14. And when I was 16, that's when I really knew I was a medium and spirits could come through me. But I lacked self-esteem so much. I had no belief in myself. No belief in myself, which means that I when I could feel them in my presence when I was sober, I was like, if I channel them now, my friends will think I'm making it up. But when I was drunk, I
mm,
was very confident. So then they would come through me and speak through me. And I am so blessed that nothing negative ever happened because it could. So I just had family members come through, the friends of family. But there had been times that I drank where my friends said, I don't remember at all. And they said, you were behaving differently. I said, because it wasn't me. And I have no memory of it. So because the crown chakra is so open, they literally come in and they'll have an experience. So I haven't not actually had any alcohol for over 5 years after I started doing
congrats.
this work. Thank you. I stopped drinking completely. It's just because I had a problem with it because I used to binge drink on weekends and yes, I also used not only to allow myself to feel comfortable, but there was a deeper pattern there. Why was I using, what was alcohol? The addiction to alcohol was just a symptom of all these other things that were going on inside of me. So I had to stop so that I could deal with all of that. And ayahuasca actually helped me with that. I didn't have the strength to not have a drink. And after I did ayahuasca, my main goal when I went there was like, please get this thing out of my life. I do not ever want to drink again. And I never did. So it was such a beautiful gift.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
I've had a interesting past with alcohol myself, and it's
Mm.
definitely nice to be in that place, at least with myself, where it's kind of controlled, but it's kind of weird because I'm kind of getting to a point now, and I'm assuming this has something to do with spirituality, where even if I have a sip, like I had a sip last night, like maybe 2 sips of like a red wine, and I kind of felt hungover this morning. Like I had like a little bit of a headache. I'm like, okay, like I know I haven't really drank in a while, but there's no way that like my body should be reacting this much to it. But I think it's probably something with just that like spiritual alignment, or once you get in a certain frequency, like even the smallest amount of alcohol could have a drastic out impact on your frequency, your vibration, or even your physical well-being.
I personally believe that it does, and the frequency of it's a little bit lower. So even if it's really good quality alcohol without preservatives, because a lot of the times the preservative in it, especially wine, that makes you feel a little bit like that the next day.
Mm,
But I personally believe that it does have a bit of a lower frequency. And because we are on such an accelerated path of evolution ascension, if our body has to catch up with the ascension that our mind, our mental, our emotional, our spiritual is going through. And that's why when people come and work with me, first question I was like, what's the quality of the water? What food are you drinking? Are you drinking alcohol? And I have turned people away and I said, go and sort out your health and then come back. Because if you want to do this work and you still have, poor habits like with, your health, it's just gonna it's going to it can actually be quite detrimental. Some people don't manage it really well.
Right.
So yes, it makes sense with the alcohol.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty crazy how, I mean, it comes back to everything needing to be in alignment, right? Whatever it is, whether it's from your food to your water to your exercise to your health, you need that physical body to be able to maintain, or to, what's the word I'm looking for here? To be a vessel, if you will, to be the
Yes.
temple. I know everyone talks about it, but it's like, how are you going to be able to handle a being of higher vibration if you're only able to handle, I mean, maybe that's not the right way to kind of phrase it, but if you're vibrating at a certain rate, how is your body going to be able to handle information from a being that's even higher than you if your body's not physically ready for it?
Yes. Yeah. So many people ask me what are tips to channel better. I'm like, how is your health? How is your body? Are you
Mm.
moving? Like I always ask those questions because the body is the vessel that is channeling. And this is a piece that many people miss, especially in this, spirituality, consciousness world, because people become obsessed, like naturally we become obsessed with all things consciousness and spirituality, and the body is such a powerful vessel for channeling. And I tell this story often. I get huge downloads when I'm at the gym squatting weights. Like usually squatting is a big one because it's such strong muscles, the lower body, or running on the treadmill. Oh my god, that's the best. All the downloads. If I want to download, just go to the gym or just go out for a jog and receive everything.
Interesting. I've been telling myself that I need to run more. And so to hear you say this, it's making me think this is another piece of the universe telling me to run a little bit more.
Yes.
Yeah. Obviously, that's why I'm here. And we did start off the podcast saying that there was going to be some information coming through on that. And there it is. There's the first one.
Yes. And usually those little things, oh, I've been hearing this. I get the feeling that I should be doing this thing. Oh, for a while, I'm feeling like I should. It's those are all the answers. So a friend of mine is saying, Ruby, I've been wanting to buy a piano for a while. I've been wanting. So then I said, come and have a session with me already. So we had a session and then all of these things were cleared. And then I give recommendations afterwards. And the recommendation was like, you must get in touch with your creative part of you now, not tomorrow, yesterday. So he
Right.
actually bought the piano and bought like I don't know how to say that in English, the drumming
Drums.
set.
Drum set.
Drums, yes. And he was like, it's gonna start, because I said when you allow the creative being that you are to express in whatever way, shape, or form that is, everything in your life starts to align more, because we are a fractal of source, a fractal of creator. And as long as we are in flow with that creativity, everything else flows as well.
So is this kind of like whenever people start saying that they're feeling stuck? Is it just that they're not listening to these intuitive pokes?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, and they're not putting their creativity into practice either, because the society hasn't. We're getting better now with the access to all the internet and social media. We're getting better with that, but it's because we weren't taught to tap into that creativity. Because oh yeah, that's just a thing that I do as a hobby. What is the purpose of that? Is it making me money? A lot of people think, oh, I'm not a professional singer, so I'm not going to sing. I'm not a No, we have to let go of that, fully let go of that. Feel like singing, sing. Feel like dancing, dance. You don't have to be a professional, and know that when you do. And for me, like you said, if you like running, for me is moving my body. So when I dance, when I go to the gym, when I run, and when I sing as well, like everything happens. Everything flows better.
Mm. Yeah, dancing and singing was another thing, as we're on this little path of stuff that I was saying I need to do a little bit more of. So just hitting it all. I'm listening. Universe, I'm listening. I told you. Uh, But that's interesting, and I kind of want to pivot back to something you were talking about with like your crown chakra, right? I think you kind of said it quickly, but the way it resonated with me was that you were talking about like I think you were hinting at trance channeling, how you're able to. I mean, kind of break this down for me. My understanding is that you kind of move your spirit to the side and a different spirit comes into you. Is that accurate or am I crazy?
That's a great way of explaining. I like the way that you explain. Um, the way that I explain is it's like my consciousness takes the back seat. So imagine that I'm sitting here right now. When I'm going to a trance state for the Arcturians to come through, there's a seat behind me and I sit there. My consciousness
Oh,
sits there. I'm
okay.
still present. I'm still, some people don't. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bashar, with Daryl Inca. I'm pretty sure that Daryl is not, doesn't remember what's going on. He channels Bashar, right? I remember. I am conscious and I am watching everything, but I don't have control of what they say. So
Interesting.
they come through me, and it's great that I remember straight away. If you ask me in a week's time, I may not remember everything, but I do remember. I am observing. I'm listening to the conversation.
So is it because do you decide whenever you come back into your body, or is it up to them?
Great question. Um, they decided based on, it's like an internal decision that we make together, but I'm not consciously thinking about it. They tune in, they know when my body's done, and they are done as well, because our frequencies have to come into alignment. So they in some way lower their frequency to the level, to my level, the 3D level, and I have to raise my frequency to a level. And there's only so much that we can stay in that state. There's only so long that we can stay in that state, especially for me. And that is why I am so, like, I stopped drinking. There is no way that I can do this process with alcohol in my system. And like, physical health for me is like a top priority.
Right. Like would that so in doing this then, are you exerting a lot more physical energy then? Like are you burning calories? Are you burning more water? Like do you need to hydrate more afterwards?
Not necessarily, but at the start, it was for my head. It was very heady. Like I would feel, it was like, oh my God, it was exhausting. I was exhausted. And when I started channeling the Arcturians, no business experience, right? I was doing starseed activations for free, like half an hour free. And that's when I had it for a whole week. I was fried. And then I had a
Wow.
chat with this business mentor, like a discovery call. She said, you cannot do that. You're disrespecting your body, your channel, and the beings that are coming through you. There must be an energy exchange. So come and work with me. I'll teach you, which was great. I did. And nowadays, it's actually gives me energy. I'm so energized after I channel them. I may be a little bit tired, where sometimes I may have like a 10-minute nap or something too, because just the whole process of having a conversation, but I feel great afterwards.
That's fascinating. So it sounds like then I'm kind of curious. I kind of have two questions at this juncture. I'm not sure which one to go on. Let me see here. That one's coming through a little bit stronger. So then have you seen your diet kind of shift as you've been going through this? Like what is kind of the history of your diet been? Have you transitioned to eating certain foods over other certain foods to help with your vibration?
100%. So after I first did, I've always been on and off being vegetarian for many years, because like I'm those people love animals so much. I'm like, I cannot eat them. It hurts my heart, breaks my heart. I'm one of those people. And after 2017, after I did ayahuasca first time, I remember seeing a piece of meat at the supermarket. I was like, oh, that's my brothers and sisters. I can never do that
Oh,
again. But
geez.
yeah, I know. In the process of going to Brazil, I ended up visiting, eating fish and eggs. And so vegan, vegetarian, fish, it was like a mess, like, back and forth between vegan and eating fish. And what happened so then I started doing this work, right? I started translating the Arcturians in 2020, and they started bringing messages to other people about the body. And I started co-creating with another person and teaching in one of her programs. And I remember just for months, I could hear this voice saying, you need to do a detox. You need to do a detox. And I was ignoring it. And
Mm.
then they said, okay, before you start co-creating on this woman on this program, you must detox. I was like, okay. So I started I found I have a friend that she's a detox expert. She's a fruitarian. It's all about fruits. So I went into a detox process with her where I only had fruits and juices for 30 days.
Wow.
Yes. It was tough, and I paid her. She gave me all these herbs. These herbs were supporting with my organs and supporting to eliminate parasites, because she said if you eat any animal product, 90% of humans that consume any animal product will have parasites. And what happened with parasites, a lot of people channel messages of parasites. They think they are channeling, because when you start craving, you think you need a food. The way that she explains is that it's not that you actually are craving a certain type of food, is that the parasite is sending that signal to your brain. So you think you're craving something because you need that mineral or that vitamin, but it's actually the parasite craving the bad food.
Mm.
And as a channel, I was like, okay, this makes sense why I need to clear my vessel so that I am channeling, it's in full integrity. So in that month was painful. I had things happening to my body. I remember purging, because when you do a detox, you purge on a cellular level. And I do this work with DNA, right, which is amazing. And I could feel so unworthy. I was like, who am I to channel? I was having all these feelings, and she gave me support every day. She was messaging me every day. She's like, Ruby, this is normal. You are purging a huge layer of unworthiness. It's ancestral. It's not just yours, because you are purging on a DNA level. So I'm purging and purging. And then the last 3 days, I only had juices, and the very last day I had a colonic. And I remember the next day I felt on top of the world. And I would go to events, like there's a lot of breath work and cacao ceremony here. I would go to these events. I would always hold back a little bit. I wouldn't dress up too much. I would be, the more behaved Rubia, and then I remember thinking, oh my God, I just want to be me, the passionate, the loud, the Brazilian, the fiery. And I realized that I was holding that back. And in that detox process, I went in and it was a breath work. And this breath work experience, I let it all out. And I was having full body orgasms in energetic orgasms during that breathwork experience. And Arcturians were coming in. It was all happening. And the facilitators at the end was like, wow, thank you for going all the way in. I said, you're welcome. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it.
I mean, who
But the
wouldn't
reason
enjoy full body orgasms? You need to send me that
the
recipe. Send me that
well,
detox.
detox for 30 days. And
Yeah,
the reason why I'm sharing this with you, it's because I was guided, specifically guided by my intuition, the Arcturus higher self. So, to have that, because now I can share that experience to tell people, like, when you clean up your body, you can have full body orgasms. And my body, I was having issues with my lips. They were always dry. I never had that before. So, like, I never had that again. So, what happened is, the body truly is the portal, like such a powerful portal. And since then, that was a year and a half ago, I've never consumed any animal products again. I've never craved some things like fish and eggs that I was craving a lot.
wow.
Um, and yes, full plant based, and I feel absolutely incredible. And there was a lot of reprogramming that I had to do around, because I've done bodybuilding before. Like I've you chicken and chicken, broccoli and sweet potato. Like I was into all of those things, and even soy products that I avoid now. So it was a full reprogramming that I can be healthy on a plant-based diet, because there's a lot of programming out there that'll say that you're not. And I believe that whatever you believe will have an effect in your body.
For sure. I think my big concern would come to protein, right? And I think whenever you do plant based, it seems like you have to really pay attention to amino acids and all this stuff. But is that is that something that you've seen? Do you track that, or do you maybe more take the route of just trusting whatever plant or vegetable is going to be presented to me is what I need at this time? How do you kind of work with all that?
So the way that so my detox person, she explains all of that. She believes, and I want to make it very clear that it's so important, whatever diet that you choose, that it feels good for you, feels in alignment for you. So this is my experience. this is experience that I've had. The way that this person explains to me, she explains that the whole you must get this certain amount of protein. She says it's a program. She said that it's not actually the truth. And she said that all the amino acids that you need, you can get that with plants and with the fruit and with fruits. And she would send me videos of these people that have been fruitarians for, like, there was this 85-year-old guy that was a fruitarian for years. He looked like he was 50. He was so
Wow.
fit and so healthy. And there's a guy, his name is Dr. John Rose, maybe his name, and they teach, they go really deep, really, really deep in teaching. And they talk about hydration. So she said that our cells aren't hydrated enough, and that's more important than protein. And when I say hydration, it's not water hydration, it's the hydration from fruits and juices. And yeah, there's so much. It's such a big topic, and there's so much that she teaches. So what I do now, I fully trust, and I feel incredible. I've always loved fruit. And I remember when I was doing bodybuilding, I was so sad that I couldn't eat fruit and I couldn't drink juices.
Mm, that's
And
interesting.
I believe that is work, because you can look at me. I have so much energy. I'm really healthy. I'm 40, and like I honestly feel like I'm 25, and I like to believe that I look like I'm 25 as
Oh,
well, you know.
that's going to keep you
And
25.
yeah, so there's all this programming, and like if when you research, it makes a lot of sense. So she talks about, imagine the body as being a fish tank. So you can feed that fish tank all the food that the fish needs. The fish is going to be relatively healthy. But unless you change all the water, the fish is going to start getting sick. And literally, that's what they talk with detox. It's literally changing, it's cleansing out all the toxins, everything that's been sitting in your intestine tract, in your digestive system for like years and years and years.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. It's got me feeling like maybe a detox is another thing I need to take away from this podcast. Maybe I need to look into that.
Mhm.
That'd be interesting because I've never done one of those. I know in my history of, and I've been thinking about making a podcast on this for a while. Is like my history anecdotally has been like I've tried all the diets, and it's interesting because it seems like I go through these phases where there's certain foods that I just like crave like crazy. Like I know peanut butter and like almond butter I craved for like 2 months, and then it shifted, and then I was, what was it? It was like yogurt and fruit for like another 2 months. And now I'm on like salads or just like raging at me. It's just like it feels so great when I eat them. It's so weird. And obviously, guys, this is not medical advice whatsoever. I'm just highlighting that in my journey, it seems like I've kind of been on this like stream of, okay, like I remember there was like a 6 month time frame where I tried carnivore and I felt great whenever I did carnivore. But then it's like that led me to introducing vegetables back into my diet, which then made me feel great. And then I did paleo. And, it was like this weird mix of like, it was like almost in the way I see it. And again, I'm planning on doing like a podcast in the future at some point, or maybe it'll come out before this episode. I don't know. So maybe that's a whole different conversation. But but the point of it being is that I always found it very fascinating that it seemed like there was no specific diet at any point in time. It seemed as if like the more that I progressed down my journey, that the food I was intaking or the food that my body was craving seemed to change throughout it.
Yes, I've gone through similar journey of trying everything as well, and I have settled now into this plant based one.
Plant-based one is the way to go.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe I gotta try it. Maybe I gotta give it a shot. Give it its due diligence of trying it out,
Mm.
seeing how the end
And I'll be
sticks.
fully transparent. Like, I have sometimes I'll crave meat. It's very rare, but there was a few days that I was craving it, and I always go back to the why. I go back to the why. I think about, can you
Mm.
imagine if there's parasites, and I went through, and then can you imagine if parasites come to more? And then I think about cows. I love cows. I think they're like big dogs, big pets. Like, can you imagine everything that the cow went through? And then instantly I'm like, okay, don't feel like it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another big thing.
Yeah.
I know someone who talked about this. Oh, episode 29, Danny West. She was even saying how she ate meat one time and she got this like vision, if you will, this like clairvoyant sense that she like saw basically the entire process of like that meat getting to her plate, and it like freaked her out to the point where
Mm,
she just like
mm,
couldn't eat it anymore. And I was like,
yeah.
oh, geez,
Yeah.
that'd be
I
a
feel
lot.
that. I feel very deeply.
That'd be a lot. Okay, a little bit of a topic shift. I keep getting the poke to ask you this. How do you feel? And I don't know, like, if there's something in me that's resisting asking this, so bear with me here. um, so I don't know if there's like a. I'll just ask it. Are you open to like showing us what trance channeling is all about and like bringing the Arcturians on? Is that something that feels resonant? Because I'm very interested in it.
Yes, I can do that.
it.
Um, the only thing that I would ask is, so they will come through and they interact really well on questions. So would you have anything that you'd like to ask them?
I mean, I kind of just would go with the flow of it. Are there specific questions that I should think about, or like, do I need to give you the intention, I guess, of it? Is that what kind of
Um,
the thing?
if you have an intention, yeah, and if there's any questions that you feel called to ask,
Um,
is what I usually say. That's present for you that you want to ask. But they will come in. They may give a short message, and they'll be like, "Okay, what? How can we support?"
I mean, yeah, I guess the big one would just be like, hmm. I mean, I guess the intention would be that it's helping whoever's going to listen to this podcast the most, would be like the big intention. I guess at a um I don't know. I guess I'm kind of blanking on any questions that I might have. Is it one of those things where it's hard to come up with questions while you're talking with them? Because I know that's happened before.
Usually this happens like because people have these sessions with them. It's funny, and they're like, "Oh my god, I don't know what to ask." I said, as soon as they come through, you know what to ask.
Okay, because I that's what
Yeah,
I'm kind of feeling is that
yeah,
that's what I'm feeling. The
yes.
intention
And
though
if
is
you're
definitely for the highest vibration of everybody.
yeah, and that's the best. And usually you may ask them, what do you have a message for the audience? They'll share a message, and then from whatever it is that they start talking about, you'll be like, oh, okay, I want to ask a question about this, and I want to ask it, and then it creates a
Mm,
conversation, because they're really great at having conversation. They don't just come in and just start talking, anything, because they truly believe that questions are the answers, and in questions, so many answers are uncovered.
I'm excited. I'm really excited.
Yes. And do you want to do that now?
Yeah, sure. How does that
Okay.
feel for you? All
Yeah, it sounds great.
right, let's do it.
So the way that it works, you ask them questions, and if you when you finish asking, you can let them know and I'll come back. Otherwise, if you keep going, when they're ready to go, they will let you know we have space for one more question.
Okay, cool.
And you don't need to wait for them to prompt you. You can continue the conversation. If you finish a question, they finish answering, you can go on to the next one.
Just like they're a human
Um,
being.
yeah, that's it. Because some people sometimes are just this awkward silence, and they're like waiting, because they,
Okay.
and people sometimes, it's interesting because they put them on a pedestal, right? And one of the message that they have shared before, they're like, we wish you put yourselves in a pedestal like you put us on a pedestal.
Oh, yeah. Because I could see people
Yeah.
relinquishing a lot of their power to a higher voice, if you will.
Yeah, and they say, they're like, guys, you humans are incredible. They say we can't do 90% of it, but the experiences that you have are so rich. We're not able to have the experiences that you have. It's such an honor to connect with humans. For them, it's such an honor.
Oh, okay. This has me a lot of questions on duality are now coming up by you saying
Mm.
this.
And like they say, just to have a glimpse. There was one time, I'll have to tell you the story before we go in, because
Sure.
you get what I'm trying to trying to, so that when they come on, people are seeing them as equal rather than, wow, these beings are here and they're better than us. Because the pedestal and the pitch, putting people on a pedestal, putting people above and below. This is such a message that I got through recently as well, so deeply. And I remember one time I had just a little bit of mushrooms with some friends. I always, if I ever have it, it's rare, but if I ever have it, it's a little bit because I'm very sensitive. And I remember at the time I was connecting with the Pleiadians at the time. And we were all like smelling oils. There were all these essential oils. And, the oils smell so much better when you like just had mushrooms. Everything just felt so good. And I remember they were, and I could started feeling their presence. And this is when I was just started channeling them. I said, "Can you smell oils?" They're like, "No." I said, "So, but can you experience what we're experiencing right now?" And then they started to show me how they do it. They said, "Rubia, right now, we are connecting with your frequency. And when you smell the oil, we can tap into the frequency of the oil. And that's how we experience the oil. We also experience the frequency of the experience you're having. And right now, we think that is absolutely amazing because we can feel it by tapping into your frequency. But we
Mm.
cannot feel it fully like you do because we don't have the body that you have and the sensations that you have access to." And I remember in that moment, that's when the big thing dropped about like, wow, we are such incredible beings. And look at these beings that I put on a pedestal telling me that I am amazing and I'm having an experience that they can't have.
Right. It really puts things in
Yeah,
perspective.
100%.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Okay, let's do it. So it just takes me a few seconds. I'm just going to close down my eyes and then they'll just start talking
All
in
right.
about 2 minutes max. So
Okay.
bear
No
with me.
rush. No rush. We got time.
So I welcome in the beautiful beings of light and of the light only. In a moment, I'll be trance channeling the beautiful Arcturian Council of Light, knowing that we are very guided, very protected, and calling forth that whatever message that is shared by the Arcturians, that is to serve humanity at the highest. Dear ones, we are the Arcturian Council of Light, and it is an honor for us to be here today. We would like first and foremost to thank you, dear soul, for giving this opportunity for us to come here and continue sharing a message of light, a message that is here to support humanity at the highest.
Well, thanks for being here. It's an honor. Arcturian Council of Light. Is that how I should address you? I assume, is there like multiple different beings that I'm talking to, and you've merged your consciousness, or is it just one being, or how do you guys identify in that regard?
Dear soul, we are a consciousness, and you are welcome to address us in whatever way feels more aligned to you.
Okay. Arcturian Council. Is there, given the traveling to conscious, first of all, welcome to the Traveling to Consciousness podcast. It's an honor to have you guys here. Is there a specific message maybe that my audience, our audience, the audience of Traveling to Consciousness would most align with and be the most helpful for them at this time?
Yes, there is a message that we would like to share. And we would like to say that a lot of the messages that we share may seem very simple to the human mind. And we want to make sure that you know that being a human and living this experience, this consciousness experience as a human, is very simple, although there has been many things that have been created to overcomplicate things. So we invite you to receive the messages that we share with your heart and try to apply them, of course, if that feels in alignment for you. Everything that we share, we always say, if it resonates, take it. If it doesn't, leave it. Because at the end of the day, you get to choose. So the message that we share, that we have been sharing for a while now, we want to invite you to really tune in into your being and ask yourself what it really is, the purpose of my soul. What is the true of my soul? What it really is that my soul chose to come here and experience in this human experience. And we want you to authentically put that into practice with no judgments, whatever it is that you choose. Because remember, everything is spiritual. So we want you to ask yourself now, what is it that you want to experience? What is that you want? How do you want your soul to express itself in this human form? Go out there and make it happen authentically. Be authentically you in whatever way, shape, or form that you can, because when you do so, you are then automatically giving a permission slip for those around you to do the same.
Mm. Something that's coming up for me is the connection between desire and enlightenment. So a lot of the, let's say, information that I've been consuming lately has been around Hinduism. And it seems to me that we need to let go of our ego and our earthly desires in order for us to become of more higher enlightenment or more godliness. So, how are we able to mesh this conundrum of doing what our soul came here to do while releasing human desires? Because to me, it seems like there's probably something that's intertwined or connected between these two things.
Well, dear, so for some of you, enlightenment is the ultimate goal, then it would be a journey that will feel easier to let go of those human desires. So for you, is a matter of really tuning in. Is this the path that I'm choosing and the path that I want to be on? Of course, if this is something that you are considering for yourself. If enlightenment is the path that your soul has chosen, then everything is going to conspire. It's going to conspire to make for it to happen. Although, know that not all humans have chosen the ultimate goal of enlightenment. Therefore, if their souls has chosen to come here and express itself through allowing some of their human desires to come through, so then that they go for it. And before, let's say, hypothetically, that you are then, that your soul has chosen to go through this process to reach enlightenment. But before you do so, there are certain human desires that you want to conquer first. Then, if that is what it is, it's a matter of accepting that as part of the journey. Does that make sense and answer your question?
It does a little bit because I've found myself personally in kind of like this dualistic nature between pursuing the letting, I've read about these, gurus and how they just like swamis or Buddhas, how they just release all attachment or desires. But there's a piece of me that finds that enticing, but there's a piece of me that also finds it enticing to still want human pleasures of fame, money, sex, if you will. So it seems to me that there's an internal struggle, if you will, between the two. But it sounds like in your answer that it doesn't necessarily have to be either or. It sounds like pursuing one can help the other one evolve as well.
That is correct. And then we would ask you the question for you and for your audience to always ask yourself whatever it is that you have the human desire, because at the end of the day, there is a human desire of wanting the enlightenment as well as all the other stuff that you mentioned, like the money, the fame, the sex, they are all come under desire. And it's asking yourself, what is the purpose for my desire? Which part of me is this? Which part of me wants this? And which part of me is going to be satisfied if I achieve this? If I achieve the fame, for example, or if I achieve the enlightenment? And really digging where this is coming from for your own purpose, for knowing what is the purpose. Always asking yourself for everything that you desire or that you are learning more about, and for what purpose? And for what purpose? And a lot of the times, the purpose is, well, because my soul wanted to experience this here. There is no right or wrong answer for what is the purpose.
Mm. So this kind of then ties into maybe the idea before I was even born, with like choosing my path. Are these answers right at the root of like these, at the root of like, what is my purpose? Was the answer maybe determined before I chose to incarnate into this human form, or is it a answer that's always evolving as I evolve?
It is an answer that is always evolving as you evolve, and there are certain specific things that you do choose to experience. And remembering as well that there are multiple timelines and multiple versions of you experiencing itself. Therefore, each time that you make a choice, you will be having a certain experience in certain version of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's as if it's like a root system, right? If I'm at the surface level of like the base of a tree, and I can choose which route to go down, which deviation of the routes to go down, and everywhere I come across a different choice, a part of me is picking one or the other. So I will be going off into these different directions, but I will only be experiencing one segment at a time.
That is correct. And it is a great example and also a great way to show that all paths lead home. So there is never a wrong choice. All there is feedback and life experiences.
So this is, I guess, then an interesting part. Going off that metaphor, is it then that all of the roots, like kind of the way that it plays out in the material world or the physical plane, is that the roots all scatter off in different directions? But based on what you just said, it's almost as if they scatter off in different directions and then would intersect or reconjoin down, let's say, at the core of the earth or something like that.
That is correct.
Mm. So, small topic shift. I'm interested about this. Um, Also, with kind of the path of the Hindu that I've been looking at, is they talk about this direct communion or direct channeling of God or source energy. So, in the spiritual landscape, in Western spirituality, it seems, a lot of people channel different deities. We're talking to the Arcturian Council of Light. What are maybe pros and cons to people channeling specific gods or goddesses versus just channeling source energy?
Dear, so the way that it works is that we will give you an example as Rubia. So Rubia and us had a soul contract to be having this specific experience, to be so that Rubia would channel and we would come through in this form and know that we are connected to source. Although what has happened is that we have chosen to have the experience through Rubia, and Rubia say we channel the Arcturians, and this is because of the path that Rubia's soul has chosen. From the beginnings of times for her, it has always been that she's connected to light beings, as some of you say, extraterrestrials, because there are many humans that will get the attention, will listen, stop and listen to Rubia when she says Arcturians, although there are many humans who will not if she says source. So when there are specific words to describe source in this case for us and Rubia is Arcturians, it is because of the specific people that came here to be served by her and by us. So this is a matter of words that are being used for specific humans who will resonate with specific energies. So, in your case, as you already mentioned, there are many beings that you are very connected to, the yogis and the paths that you have been studying. So there's a higher chance that the message that they share, the experiences they had, will have more credibility than the ones that we share, for example. And not saying that you will not feel the credibility coming from us, although it's because you connect with them more, therefore the message that they share, because at the end of the day, it is all coming under the umbrella of source. But it's
Mm,
because source is creator, and creator chose to experience itself in multiple forms in your planet. And one of the ways that creator chose to experience itself is in all the various multiple ways of channelings and the beings that are being channeled.
gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, and with that being said, I assume that also means that I'm still going to be able to get information that's aligning with me through you. It's almost just that if I were to come across or even myself channel a yogi, it would be even more of a direct impact on my soul. It's almost like certain people are able to help other people with given issues, right? Like if it was like let's say issues that women are facing, Clayton Cuteri isn't going to be able to help people as much as a female who's gone through similar issues would be able to help them.
That is correct. So some messages will resonate, of course, but when it's something that you feel a deep connection with, it resonates on a deeper level. And a lot of the times you are able to receive that message on a deeper level and resonate with it more.
Gotcha. And so even to the extent of like soul contracts, would it be even in like how deep? I've never really explored this. How deep does it go? Like was it in my soul contract before even coming in here that Ruby and I were going to have this conversation on traveling to consciousness and then even more so channel the Arcturians from here?
That is correct, dear. So all of these experiences were already, because it is all happening simultaneously as well. So we must point that out. And of course, it has been laid out for all these experiences to happen. And there is a timeline where you both don't connect either. Although the timeline of highest alignment is that Ruby has chosen is to get her message, our message, this message to as many people as possible. So in her search of doing that, then you both connected.
Mm. Okay, so it's not that Rubia and I specifically have a soul contract together. It's more that the soul contracts that we would have laid out before incarnating ended up merging since we got to this point making the decisions that we made to entangle our realities in such a way.
Yes, and there was a soul contract as well that depending on the choices that you make, that you made, that contract would come into fruition, which is what's happening right now.
Oh. So that's interesting, and I think what a lot of people get tripped up on, and even maybe myself if I start getting into my logical mind about this, is that this is something that would have to be laid out for every single person on Earth and maybe even more so, every conscious being in the entire solar system at large. I mean, and I guess for me as a human, it seems almost impossible to comprehend that 7 billion people could somehow be intertwined in such a way that all of these contracts are laid out. I mean, it like, is there a way that you're able to help my third dimensional mind even comprehend the grandiose or the humongous nature of such a plan or such a set of contracts?
We love observing how the human mind works, especially when it comes to the logical component. It is somewhat entertaining. And we want you to know that there is only so much, dear soul, that the logical mind can understand. It goes so beyond what your logical mind can understand, and also beyond what human words can understand. And in your path of studying the lifestyle, the teachings, the wisdom of the yogis, there is going to be a point where you will understand, and there will be no logical mind or words involved. There will be a feeling and a deep knowing, and you may reflect back when it comes to that for you. You will reflect back to this conversation, and you will know, you will have the thoughts of, now I understand what the Arcturians were explaining back when we had that conversation.
Mm.
And to give you some words right now to make your mind happy, it is universal laws. This is creation in full creation. It is all happening in such beautiful way. And there are many laws of synchronicity and of frequency and of tapping into the quantum field. So, if you are to look into these laws of synchronicity and study more about the quantum field, it may bring you more explanation so that you, for your mind, for your logical mind, may understand this on a deeper level. But know that the deep, deep understanding, it's going to come without word explanations and without your logical mind understanding.
So it sounds like in that answer, for me personally, and we're going to get back to the society at large, but for me personally, the deepest knowing that I'm going to find is on this path within regards to Hinduism or yogis.
That is correct if you choose to continue going down that path. And know that it can come in other ways. You could be having a meditative experience, you could be meditating, and that could drop into your field. The
Mm,
point really is that it's not going to be through your mind.
okay. And I think maybe one more thing, just to kind of wrap up something we talked about earlier, is like, because I didn't realize we were going to go down this rabbit hole, but in this pursuit, it seems like there is a aversion to those physical desires. And as I'm even about to ask this, I think we covered it, but there is a path, I suppose, that I am able to go down the yogi path and also still, I don't want to say hold on to, but still pursue physical desires.
That is correct. But the more you go down the yogi path, if you are truly embodying that path, you will naturally start to let go of the physical desires. And we have an example that we can give you that has happened to Rubia. For a while, she has been learning about what she's feeding her mind, and she has been getting nudges to stop watching certain movies, and in the movies that she watch and documentaries through Netflix, for example, that there is a lot of lower frequency content. Although for Rubia, she was happy. She said, I am okay with this. This is part of my human experience. And I'm not going to judge this as being good or bad or high or low frequency, because it is something that my human is enjoying. And I allow my human to enjoy as long as it is not being detrimental to me. So this is the thought that she was having. And in the last few months, especially few weeks, she started to having a lot of resistance. And then she noticed that as she watched certain movies, she could feel the experience affecting her life. She was having bad dreams and just feeling yucky after watching these movies. And then now she got to a point where she canceled her membership and she has no desire to watch any of those movies or documentaries anymore. And even recently, she tried to watch something on YouTube because she already canceled her Netflix, and she flicked through all these movies. And there was absolutely nothing there that she could get herself to watch because it is no longer in alignment. So she is now naturally repelling those things. So we
Mm.
hope that this example shows you that allow yourself to go through this journey, and you will naturally, if it is part of your journey, start to naturally repel the things that are not in alignment with that yogi Buddhist path. Does that make sense?
Sort of. It sort of seems like, there's a piece of me, let's say, that is still the desires, right? Let's say the desires of starting a family, desires of creating a big podcast, the desire of believing that creating a big podcast would help a lot of people, right? Like I would label those probably, let's say, I mean, making a lot of money. All those are definitely in the desire realm. But then as you kind of transition over to how we're talking about the enlightenment realm, it's releasing all of those desires. So then I would say where the conversation kind of is transitioning is like, would I get to a point where I would have to just stop creating content as a whole in order to fulfill like the desires? Like, because it comes in my mind, this balance of desires and doing, if you will, right? Like if I desire a large podcast, but I guess like even as I'm articulating this, it seems to me as though it becomes back to like, what is the purpose of the podcast? Is it out of the desire of money and growing a large podcast, or is it out of the desire of, or not even the desire, right? It would be, is it to just connect with more people? And is that kind of more of the shift that would occur? It's not necessarily that I have to stop making the podcast or will stop. It's just the underpinning purpose of why it's being created in the first place.
That is correct. What is the real deep truth purpose for all the desires? And making sure that it's not just filling a hole, a void, something that Rubia calls the dangling carrots. So her dangling carrots was making a certain amount of money, and guess what? Her business was never working, because then when she got to the root cause of that, it was going to fill a hole that existed inside of her. And the moment that she released the dangling carrots, which was the money, the business success, the amount of clients,
Mm.
then she started to still take the aligned action, because her sole purpose is to serve humanity at the highest, and she loves what she does. And then she continued to take aligned action. Then everything started to flow. And then even more money than what her goal was started to flow into her reality. So it was a matter of first finding the real deep reasons and removing any dangling carrots, removing any holes that weren't filled, so that the purpose of it was in full alignment.
Gotcha. That makes sense. It's almost
And
like,
it is okay to have desire. So, of course, she still has the desire for the money, but it is not the number one priority. And she knows that the money is a result of staying in full alignment with her soul's calling.
right, the number one priority is either fulfillment or alignment, and then everything else falls into place.
That is correct. And it's about fully accepting the desires that are there, but asking, why is this desire here?
Mm.
If there is fame, for example, why do I want the fame? What part of me wants this fame? Where is this going back to? And then if there is something to heal there, healing that. And then if the fame is, this is going to reach as many people as possible, then I'm going to be serving humanity at the highest. Is great. But if the fame is there to fill a hole, to fill a gap, to fill a need to be loved, to be seen, then it's going to create other issues. And
Right.
it's, that hole is never going to be filled. That is why you see so much drama happening in the world of famous people.
Right. And even more so, to give an example, if you will, um, a kind of a role model, if you will, or I hate to say idol, but at least someone who I put I don't, pedestal is the wrong word, as we talked about earlier, but like as someone who I see as being a very interesting and someone who I would be striving towards would be like a Joe Rogan, where his whole purpose when he started his podcast was just because he enjoyed talking to people, right? He never put this desire to be at the top because of filling voids, right? Whether it was money, whether it was fame, like he didn't, he continuously says how he doesn't care about that. And as a result, it seems like anything that people try to throw at him, it never seems to stick. Like whether you try to call him this or that, it never seems to stick to him because it's almost as if it's not something that he's clinging to. Being perceived in a certain way is not something that he clings to.
That is correct. And that is a great example.
Mm. So speaking of, I think this is also a great thing to kind of transition to talk to, because I think the audience might be interested in this, which is physical world, like physical earth world aliens or even UFO contact. I know one of my personal desires would be to be one of the very first podcasts to physically interview an alien. So, I guess that might be a little bit farther down the rabbit hole, but where do you see the possibility of aliens landing on Earth within the next 20, 30 years? Is that high probability? Is it absolutely impossible? Like, how does that shake out in the grand scheme of things?
The probability will really depend on how humans evolve their consciousness on a individual level and then on a collective level. And we are seeing a somewhat slow evolution and ascension on the individual level, because there are too many distractions happening on the collective. So the message that we have is for each individual to really focus on their individual evolution and ascension journey, because the way that it works for physical contacts with beings from other realms, it's that the human's physical nervous system must be so regulated, and it must evolve to the next level. Current humans nervous system is not built to a level that you can have physical contact, hence why when it happens it's very rare.
Mm,
And there are examples of people that have had it, and that it created many issues in their life. Many of you already have physical contact, but you are switched off to of remembering this because your nervous system cannot handle it. Not because you are not good enough or anything like that, but it's because it has not been built for contact. Also, because there is still too much lower vibrational consciousness regarding being attacked and being war. There are many new humans who mean well, although when these humans see a spaceship up on the sky, for example, or see extraterrestrial beings in person, they will go into panic, into protection mode, and into attack mode.
right. And I think this is interesting because I remember sitting on my bed one night and like literally thinking to myself, like if a gray, like the real skinny gray aliens with like big black eyes, if one of those was to be in front of me, like how would I feel? Like how would I honestly feel? And I remember feeling kind of like this impulse up my spine of like, oh shit, like I would actually be scared. Like I was like truly being honest with myself. And there was this feeling of like, oh shit, like that would actually cause fear, if you will, to see this being. And so I guess that leads me to the next question, which would be like, what could I do day to day that would relax my nervous system whenever it comes to aliens or even a foreign being appearing in my physical reality?
This is all part of your ascension. So as you ascend and evolve on all levels, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, energetic, your whole being evolves and ascends, including your body, your physical body, and your nervous system. Then you may get to the next level where your nervous system is also goes to that next level, that you can then have that physical contact. Although it's important that the whole of humanity, or a large portion of humanity, is going there, because trust us, no extraterrestrial being will come onto this planet knowing that they are going to cause more havoc and that it's going to cause attacks and wars. And that is exactly what would happen if that happened right now.
And is this what I feel like people usually talk about, the Galactic Federation of Light, when it comes to this? And that's kind of their role, is to prevent any sort of interbeing from transgressing, if you will, or making themselves known on planet Earth.
That is correct. And know that many humans want other beings to come here also for ego purposes. I want to tell everyone that I had an encounter. I
Mm.
want to show others a photo with the encounter that I had. So the purpose of it goes back to that question. And for what purpose? And right now, the best way to continue communication is through this, what you are doing right now. This is the best way to continue connecting with beings like us, is through channeling messages that can come through in many forms.
And why is that? Is that because it's less shocking on our nervous system? Because, it's like, does it like almost give my brain a little bit of ability to relax, or to even doubt that it's an Arcturian being that's speaking through Rubia right now?
That is correct, because then you are able to be in the state that you are right now and receiving all the information that you are receiving. And only those of you, only humans who are ready to receive this message will receive this message. And only those of you who also believe will be receiving this message. Because of course there are people that will be listening to this or watching this and thinking it's absolutely lies or bullshit or made up. And then that message is not for those people. So this is a great way of also make sure that we are coming through and that our message is only coming through for those who are ready to receive.
Interesting. Something that's coming up as well, and it's going to come back to kind of the Galactic Federation of Light. And I'm thinking about, in terms of like Roswell, because I've thought about this before, is like, if aliens, if I know they are, but in hypothetical, if they are so evolved that they're able to bend space and time around their aircrafts, how could an aircraft or a spaceship or UFO have ever crashed into the New Mexico desert? And I think based off the reports, it seems very probable that it was a spacecraft. So like, how does something like that almost slip through the cracks? Or does this go back to what we were talking about earlier, that it was these aliens, sole contract was actually to crash in the desert in order to ignite this mass awakening back in the 50s?
Yes, that is correct. And there's also the fact that not all aliens, extraterrestrials, are as evolved as you think they are.
Mm. So let's say this then, based on, if we had to put a number on it, right? I guess the universe is infinite. Do you have a rough estimate, I guess, of how many like planets with, like, let's say, biologically engineered life, or like I guess life forms that have intelligence, like how many of those exist? And then where does Earth sit on the like the scale of enlightenment? Like are we in the top 50 percentile, top 70 percentile? Do you have a rough estimate of those numbers?
That is a very logical mind question. We are unable to answer your question, dear soul, because that is, yes, that is a human logical mind question. And when you look through the lenses outside of duality and outside of ranking, then there is no such thing. There are only different levels of consciousness.
Mm.
And a lot of the language that we use so that things make sense to you, to your audience, and to the logical mind.
Right, and where my mind is now kind of going with this is how plant life is intelligent at a specific level. So in order to classify like another planet with like if there's another planet out there with nature on it, it's like, okay, that could be classified as intelligent life. So like, my logical mind, it's like, okay, do you want us to count that? It's like, you could, maybe not, so it gets into that weird maybe conundrum. Where it gets interesting, I guess, is if we go down that ladder, right? And we're talking about, let's say, rocks or inanimate objects. How is there a way that our logical mind, or maybe our logical mind can't, like, how do we perceive the consciousness that are in inanimate objects or things that we perceive to be inanimate?
If you are to look at nature in your planet, nature is very, very evolved if you are to look through those lenses. And the interesting thing on your planet is that many humans see themselves as more evolved than nature, although they are not, especially in this day and age, because nature is going with the flow of creation and with the cycles of life. And is just following because it doesn't have the logical mind to control it. And many animals on your planet are actually have a more evolved consciousness than humans do because they are following the flow of life and the cyclical patterns and the laws of nature, whereas many humans are not.
What animals would we be talking about?
Most animals.
Most of them have a higher level of consciousness. Is that because they do not have a logical brain to get in the way of them?
That is correct. And that is a perspective that we can bring through to you, and that can be challenging for many humans to receive this. And you can look, some of you have already studied many of these beings, and that you have whales and dolphins that are very, very advanced beings.
Interesting. Because I guess if to play devil's advocate or to play the role of the human, right? The ego of the human would come in and say, well, we could easily kill any animal, so therefore we should be revered as the most consciously aware because we have almost control over nature, right? Like even on our planet today, we argue about the fact that we're killing nature and that we need to stop killing nature and how, we might be able to kill the planet, if you will. But it seems to me as though that's not the case based on what you're saying.
That is correct. And animals are following the flow. Animals will hunt for food. And if there is no food to hunt, they will die, which is the natural flow of life. Whereas humans are in some way creating certain things to have more food, to create that food, which is then causing other issues on top of other issues.
Mm. And what's coming to mind is you might be referring to, I don't know if you are, but like I know in America there's like an over farming problem where land hasn't been given enough time to I'm not a agricultural engineer, so I don't really know, but given the soil enough time, let's say, to replenish nutrients in order for us to refarm it. Is that kind of what you're hinting at here?
That is correct. And another example is killing the lungs of your planet, the Amazon, to clear land to then farm for factory farming for cows.
Mm,
And that is something that an animal would never do, because the animal is following the flow of life, is following the cycles of life and nature, whereas humans will create something that kills life to try and survive.
interesting. But do not all animals try to kill things in order to survive?
They are following the natural cycle of life. So, in this case, for example, instead of clearing land to put cattle in a place where it does not belong in the Amazon, it would be a matter of how can I go out there and hunt my own animal?
Mm, that's interesting, and something else that's coming up is kind of like the correlation that we've seen with CO2 and nature, if you will, right? Where it seems like the majority of like what I've seen throughout history, and I might be wrong about this, but whenever there's an increase in CO2 levels, there's an increase in plant life. Um, I guess in the issue becomes is that if we have this increase in CO2 and then we're also clearing out the plant life, it seems like that's whenever nature is going to find its imbalance or it's going to come out of whack. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is correct. And that is why part of the message that we share is for humans to consume and eat foods of the earth. If that feels in alignment, of course, Rubia always makes it very clear for people to follow whatever feels good for them and research. But when you are eating foods of the earth, the fruits and the vegetables, you are following the cycle of nature, the cycle of life. There is more flow.
Hmm. See, I think that might be another thing too that I don't know if people would bring this up still, but I've thought of before is like, well, I mean, if plants are living and animals are living, are we not still eating living things? Like what makes it more maybe from an enlightened point of view, what makes it more beneficial to kill a plant than it does to kill an animal?
We say there, so still go and kill the animal and eat the animal. As long as you are going out there and doing that yourself instead of buying the packaged meat at the supermarket.
Okay. Because I guess that
There
probably
is no problem in killing the animal because that is part of your life on your planet. Hence why most animals and carnivores in this case, or animals that are hunting, they are hunting and they are killing and eating that animal, although many of you are not doing that and you are still consuming that animal.
isn't it also fair to say though that majority of people aren't growing lettuce or onions or tomatoes in their backyard either though, right? Or is that something that we should be is that something that we can do at the individual level that would help us? I mean, I guess I kind of loaded that up with a lot there, right? But how does it tie in then that it's okay? And maybe you're not justifying it, but it sounded or felt like you were saying that it's okay to eat packaged lettuce or spinach, but if it's packaged meat products, then that's something different. Or am I interpreting that wrong?
Yes, you are correct. It is a very complex subject, but what we are pointing out to is to the natural flow where the animal is being hunted, and then that person that hunts the animal can then sell that to their community. So you would be the same with the plants that are being grown. There is one person that is in charge of growing that, of hunting that, and then selling that. Our point with the animals is more of factory farming and the overproduction
Mm,
and the source of where it's coming from.
bring it more
So,
local.
not saying that all humans should be going out and hunting and growing all of their food. but really is what is the source of that food.
Gotcha. It's almost to bring it back more to the local level is what you're, I guess, more advocating for.
That is correct.
So I'm also interested in what was I interested in? Rubia said something before we kind of got on here, and she was talking about pedestalizing, how people will pedestalize the Arcturian Council or maybe any other sort of galactic or deity that they might be channeling, versus like seeing that we're on this almost more even playing field where it's like being a human is pretty fucking dope as well, right? So, what is it maybe that is coming up that people are seeing and pedestalizing aliens or pedestalizing people? You know, like I know I have a bunch of friends who, you know, kind of comment, maybe in a joking way, but it's like, oh, like I just want the aliens to take me away. I just want the aliens to come down and take me versus embodying this nature of being human? Is it the duality, or kind of like from your perspective, why do humans tend to pedestalize aliens or other light beings?
That is a common pattern for humans. They grow up putting others on a pedestal, including their parents. So that is something that is created from a young age. And then the way that society has also created these programs where you pedestal your teacher and anyone that you would then perceive as better, your boss, or anyone that may have something that you perceive as being better. So then humans go on about their life on this system of putting people and things below or above. So if you are putting someone above you, including light beings, beings from other dimensions, it means that you will also be putting other beings and other humans below you. And this is a template that has been playing out in humanity, that it is not serving at the highest, because that then stops many humans from fully living out their soul's purpose, because they are putting themselves below others. So it is just a matter of seeing yourself, and it may sound so simple, yet it is a process to truly embody this truth, which is a matter of remembering that you are a fractal of source, a fractal of creator energy, which means that you are all equal in some way, shape, or form. And then stop playing out the above or below, that then allows you to put yourself out there to follow through with whatever it is that you wish to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the big image that's kind of coming through is like the idea that, like, kind of the law of one, or the idea that all the scriptures, holy scriptures, put out there, which is, you know, everything is God. So it's like you're almost creating more separation by pedestalizing something, because you're almost saying like this thing has something, this alien, this person, this entity, this object, this money, it has something that I don't already internally have, thus creating more thus more thus creating more of an illusion of separation within yourself.
That is correct. And that is what creates the dangling carrots, that constant search for that thing that's going to support you, help you feel like above. And it is an illusion, and it continues to feed that illusion of separation.
Okay. Yeah.
And what happens a lot of the times as well, if you put, and when we say you, we mean all humans, if humans put another on a pedestal, there's a very high chance that they will idolize that person, see them as better. And the moment that that person that has been put on a pedestal does something that the other person perceives as wrong or not okay in their model of the world, then they go straight from pedestal to pit. And this
Mm.
happens all the time. And this is where you see a lot of relationships, dramas with relationships, especially when you meet someone new and you put them on a pedestal. And the moment that they start behaving in a way that you may not like, then they go from pedestal to pit.
Reminds me of famous people as well, to wrap that in from earlier, where it's like, okay, if you're pedestalizing an idol or a person, you know, they commonly say never meet your heroes. And I think it probably comes from that same energy of what you're talking about, is like, if you think this person's perfect and you catch them on an off day, right? Like they just had a bad day, they had a fight with their wife, and then, you know, someone cut them in line, and then you run into them and they're all pissed off. And it's like, you know, that's kind of where that saying of never meet your idols comes from, is that you've placed them on this pedestal, and then you caught them on their worst of worst, and you're like, oh wow, like I thought you were this guy from the movies who was always smiling and always happy, and yet, or even on social media, you're only posting when you're smiling, and it's like, oh, you are actually, you're just a human, you have bad days as well. And we guess I don't conceptualize that, and so they fall so much further in your eyes because you had placed them so high in the beginning.
Yes, and hence why your gossip magazines are so popular, because people love seeing the drama. Because when they are
Mm.
putting people on a pedestal, there is also a sense of, there is a very sneaky part of the shadow that while they are putting them on a pedestal, they also have jealousy.
I know I certainly know I have that element of jealousy whenever it comes to seeing successful podcasters or even just content creators in general. Whenever I'm like, because this kind of goes back to the desires we were talking about, where it's like, oh, like I'm very much what's the words I'm looking for here? Oh, I'm like envious or jealous of that person achieving what I desire to achieve, but they did it even at a younger age. So maybe to quickly talk about jealousy, is the way to kind of leave that out is to even just let go of those desires in the first place, or is there something even deeper to talk about with jealousy?
It is important to look deeper why the jealousy is there. There could be an unconscious pattern, or there could be a part that needs to be told it's okay. And then once looking at that, going, it is okay. That person is a mirror of me, it's a reflection of me, which means I can get there too. So thanking that person for being where they're at, because if they are a mirror of you, as everything that is a mirror of you that comes into your reality, then it means that that's your potential and that you can get there too.
Mm, right. So it could also be linked to self doubt, that you'll even reach that yourself.
That is correct. If you start to digging the jealousy and digging and seeing, oh, it could be that that person made it and I cannot. And then it's a matter of going to the root cause of the self doubt. Why is it there in the first place? Which can be related to something that happened in childhood, or something that's ancestral, that's in the DNA, or even the programming from society and religion.
Right. Well, Arcturian Council of Light. I mean, it's incredible. First channeling session we've had on this podcast, so I'm very grateful for your answers. Is there a summarizing message before we bring Rubia back in? Is there an over thematic message that you want to relay to the audience?
Yes, there are a couple of messages, and just a last continuation from the last conversation we've had is staying in your lane is very important, and focused in what you are doing, remembering your why, your purpose, and staying focused on that and going forward. Because there are a lot of distractions out there that may cause the jealousy and may cause other things, the comparison. But when you know clearly why you're here, why you're doing what you're doing, you stay focused and you continue taking aligned action, then even more things open up and the universe continues to conspire for you to make it all happen.
It's beautiful.
And a final message that we would like to leave your audience with is to really focus on the coherence of your brain and your heart. We would love to invite you to think with your heart and feel with your brain. And practice this, and you'll notice as you build more heart mind coherence, you'll be more connected in receiving the nudges of your soul to create your soul ideal reality, and to know that there are no mistakes, that there is only life experiences and feedback. So go for it, dear soul. Take extreme action outside of your comfort zone and allow yourself to fully experience this beautiful human life. Thank you, dear soul Clayton, for having us. It has been an honor for us to be here sharing this message with your audience and with humanity today. We are sending you all so much love and light.
Much love. Right back to you.
Hello, I'm back.
So did you hear all that?
I did, and I was a bit nervous in the background.
You're a bit nervous. What do you think? What are your thoughts from that?
No, that was amazing. And you asked them questions that, like, with conversations that they never had before. And because I am, I take the backseat. There's nothing that I cannot control the conversation. And because it's conversations that even I haven't had. So there is a part of my consciousness like, oh shit, where are you guys gonna take
What's up next? it's it.
Oh, that was great.
It
Yeah.
was interesting too because I can even hear it in your speech pattern now that it does sound like a different person. Are there people who think that it's not legit? Like, because I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. So is there like um any sort of pushback you ever get from people being like, oh, you're faking it, or like what do you make of that sort of energy or that sort of distrust in what you're doing?
It's really interesting because my whole life that I could have channeled that I didn't, or that large portion of my life, it was because of that.
Yeah.
If I channel, people will think I'm making it up. So when I first started doing this, because I started doing this just 101, people come and pay me for a session, and I would never do it publicly. And I remember when I first started doing that, I was charging people. I remember the same consciousness, my consciousness that's observing everything, going like, oh my God, this person will think I'm crazy. They're never going to come back. Because when it's a healing, I sing, there's shamanic singing, there's light language that comes through, there's all the things that happen. And I remember thinking, this person is going to finish the session. I'm going to have to give her money back, and she'll say that I'm crazy. And then I came out and she said that was one of the best healing and channelings that I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
So I continue to do. So what I talk a lot about, going first, taking the step when when your heart knows it's the right time, but when your mind's still doubting, go and do it anyway, because that's what I did. My mind wasn't satisfied, but in my heart, I knew I was channeling. And there was a time that I didn't want to channel, and I just heard the Arcturian literally screaming in my mind saying, Rubia, speak now.
Mm.
And it was like this very distinct voice. So as I started to do this, I completely shifted my life. And like even the people I hang out with, I've met this huge community online through the coachings that I was doing. And I have to tell you, I never, ever in the last 3 years that I've been doing this, that I started channeling, come to me and say, you're lying, you're making this up. Never. I've had a couple of comments come up on some of the posts that I put online. That is very rare. And yeah, I've had one of my reels blew up a little bit really fast, and some people were commenting, you have problems, you need to see a doctor, you need to check yourself into a mental hospital. That was the only time that happened, and my initial reaction was to delete all the comments because I didn't want to deal with it. I said, I don't want to waste my time with these people. Some people like it, I don't like it. I'm like, it's not, I don't want to waste any minute trying to convince someone that doesn't believe in me.
Right.
So And I'm okay with it. I know that there's people out there that'll think all sorts of things. It's not true. She's making it up. And people truly think if I went to a psychiatrist, I know people. I personally know people that have the same gifts that I have. They are on five types tips, different types of medication, and they spend the majority of their time locked up in their room because they cannot deal with the world and all the side effects of the medication.
Oh,
So, and I'm okay with that because there's a story that I tell. I remember, and this story relates to your question. When I was working full time, just before I quit it all and started doing this, I remember sitting in the kitchen of work, and it was a big kitchen. There's all these people, they're bitching about life, they're bitching about work. We worked in a call center, so they're bitching about the customers. And then one person starts to talk about this lady that she was stopped by the traffic lights. She has a book that looks like a religious book, and she is screaming out the teachings of that book. And one person said that she was crazy. And in that moment, I was like, oh, I was like, it just dropped. I was like, is she really crazy? Look at us. We are working a job that we don't like, bitching about what others, watching all these awful news on that big TV. We work 5 days, then we have 2 days off. We have a month off a year. I said, who is crazy? Us or her? She's out there doing exactly what she wants. She doesn't care. She doesn't give a shit about what anyone thinks. And that story for me, that really marked me. There's always someone that's going to think that you're crazy no matter what you do. So for me, I am so happy I do what I love, and if that means some people think I'm crazy or that I'm making it up, go for it.
that's cool. Yeah, because that's always what's interesting about it is it might just not be ready for them, or it might not be the right time. And I even take it kind of at this point of I guess it doesn't really matter even if it is beings from Arcturian, or if you're just going into a meditative place and, just kind of putting your ego aside and answering the questions, right? Because to me, it's like, okay, is there information in here that I can use, right? It's that idea of like take it or leave it. If there's something in here that resonates with me, all right, I'll take that and integrate it and see how I can learn from it. And I see it as even just a testament of discernment, like me discerning for myself, like, especially this being in podcast form, it's like, okay, not all of this is going to be for me. A lot of this is going to be answers for other people. So,
Mm.
what part of this is for me? What part of this do I need to leave? Where do I want to go with this conversation? So it's a whole dance, if you will, even from my perspective as well.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yes.
I felt like I had a question that I wanted to come up with in there somewhere. So you remembered it all. Was there a part of it that you wanted to touch on or kind of go into deeper?
Um, there was so much, wasn't it?
What, I didn't expect it to go that long. I think we went for almost an hour on that.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no concept of time when I'm there.
Yeah, that because that's interesting.
Yeah.
So what does it visualize to you, right? Like you said, you finally like fell back in your seat, but then like, do you see different beings coming in? Is it just like light, or what is it?
I literally see and I feel my face change. So they really do have that face of, the classical face of aliens, like the really long. And I see it like they come in and I see the blue and I see my face, I feel my face changing, and the eyes really big as well. Like it feels very real, and I see them and then they sit here, and I just feel like there's just very very Arcturian, and then and then that's when I feel it's almost like this. I feel like my body even reacts to it. And
Interesting.
then um my consciousness, I'm sitting on the back seat, and there's some, I'm shown pictures a lot of the times. As they're speaking to you, there were pictures that were coming up. It's really interesting. It's like watching, almost like watching a movie.
Mm. Any notable pictures you saw?
um when you were talking about animals and diets and everything, I was seeing all the pictures of nature. There was like, it was like I was watching a movie about the conversation that you were having.
Ah, that's so cool. And it was just kind of like
Yes,
just
very cool.
unfolding.
Yes, because what has happened in the past, They have been asked questions that it's very foreign to my consciousness, and they said we are unable to answer this right now. And it wasn't even because they couldn't answer, but it was because it was such a foreign concept to my consciousness that the words couldn't be formed.
Ah,
And this happened at the very start of when I started channeling. They guided me to watch all these things on Gaia TV. I watched many, many things there where I was learning about dimensions. I was learning so much. They said you need to learn this so that we can share more with others.
that's interesting because that was, I think, something I didn't ask, but I wanted to ask is like, is there a level of Rubia's consciousness that you're only allowed to give me certain information, if you will? Because I think that's something I've seen in the past
Mm.
where it's like if you ask a certain question and the channel or the medium who you're asking the question to isn't ready for the deeper truth, then you're not going to get that deeper truth as an answer because they themselves aren't ready for it. So therefore, they're not going to give it to you. But here's the interesting thing is that maybe even myself, I'm not ready for the deeper answer because I'm coming to this person for the question.
Yes, that makes total sense. I love that. I love that. And I have received things through them that I was like, whoa, whoa, wow, wow.
That
Yeah.
you weren't ready for, but then it was just like, well, I guess you were ready for, or you weren't knowing about it.
It was quite mind bending.
Mm,
That it took me, some time to process it. And that's where all these things started to drop in about like us. A big one that started to drop in. They were channeling this message and I wasn't getting. There were things that they were channeling that I didn't get, that it took me at least 12 months to start getting. And one of them is the fact that we are, someone was asking about creation, oneness. So they show that there's oneness, wanted to experience itself. So it's created all that is. And then that concept of me just being a meat suit, experience being oneness. So that you're me and I'm you, and that we are experiencing each other because oneness wanted to experience itself. So that took me some time to I understood it on a logical level, but on a level that I'm like,
right.
oh, I get
This
it.
reminded me
It
of what
took
they
me
said at
a
the
little
end,
bit of
which
time
was
to truly
think with
get
your
that.
heart and feel with your brain. I found that to be a very, yeah, I was like, whoa. They said it for the audience, but I was like, I think I need to take that for
How good is
myself as
that?
well.
Yeah. And you know what? I love that they so I get guided. It's our intuition. I can say they're Arcturians, but at the end of the day, it's me, it's my soul. Yeah. Okay.
Now your browser is preventing recording.